Welcome to the NOFC podcast, everyone, for episode number 41 through thick and thin with my guest, the legendary Johnny Kakavas. Johnny is a legend, not in his own mind, but in everybody's mind. Wait until you hear this guy talk. He can talk to anybody. I remember, John, what sticks out to me about you is, stand by, is being at the Orange County Fair and your presence. You would always make sure that the troopers were squared away before we went out to do our little patrols, our walking patrols within the fairgrounds. And you would talk to all of the vendors. I remember specifically the Greek guys. You would go over there and spit some Greek out, and you were very professional. If anybody had their gig line off, you were big on gig lines. I remember that. And you were just very, you were just one of the guys. You were the old school guy that not only walked the walk, but talked the talk. It did a little bit of everything. So first and foremost, thank you very much for coming on. I never worked with you on the road, but based on conversations I had with troopers that did earlier this week, I kind of wish I did. So once again, thank you for coming on, John. Appreciate it, buddy.
Oh, thank you for that. It's my pleasure.
All right. So let's get into the story of Johnny Kakavas. You mentioned that you originally came to the U.S. in 1966 from Greece. How old were you then?
So my mother is saying 66, but I'm pretty sure it's got to be 67 because I'm 3 years old and I was born in 63. Now, I do remember our little bit of life in Greece. We were dirt poor. When I say dirt poor, we lived in a small cottage with a dirt floor. My father would be off, God rest his soul, he would be off driving a truck throughout Greece. So he was gone months on end. My mother would go and collect the clothes from the neighbors and wash their clothes, and she would get paid in flour, and she would bake the best bread that you would ever have in your life. It would come out of the stove in piping hot, and thank goodness we had a little bit of butter, and that's what kept us going. But yeah, we came over in '67 is what I believe, and we settled in the Bronx. And the way we came over, you had to be sponsored by somebody back then at the time, and my mother's sister was already established here in Greece, so she sponsored us. We came over. We lived with her for a few months in on Rosedale Avenue in the Bronx, near the Soundview area, and then we started settling around in the Marble Hill area of the Bronx. Is where we grew. My family and myself, we grew up.
So when you came over and you settled there in the Bronx, was your father still around then? Did he make the journey over to you?
Oh yeah. We all came over as a family. My father, one of the few Greeks that didn't have a diner. He was an auto mechanic, so he found jobs as an auto mechanic. And I got to tell you, life in the Bronx back then was fantastic. You were out to all hours of the night, and just like they say, right around dinner time, all the mothers would call out. You'd go in, you'd have dinner, and then you'd run right back out and play whatever we were playing. And it's amazing. The childhood that we had was so much different than what it is now. The kids now are so much into the electronic devices, phones, computers, video games, all that stuff. We would go out, play tag all over the place, hide and seek, climb trees. I mean, we have so many broken bones, my brother and I, from falling out of trees and whatnot. But it was a great upbringing. And to get to it now, as what made me decide to go into law enforcement. When you're in the Bronx growing up, whatever game you're playing, whether it's stickball or football, whatever, you're playing in the streets. And when you're playing in the streets, you have to have somebody as a lookout for the cars that are coming down the street. So you could be in the middle of playing football and going one Mississippi, two Mississippi, and all of a sudden you hear car, and you'd have to stop, and you'd have to play the down over again. Same thing with stickball. So one day, I think I'm about 12 years old, and I told this story at my retirement party, and I'll tell you why it rings a little bit when I told it at my retirement party. Um, we're playing football, and I'm about 12 years old. All the friends are in the street, and you got to picture a street in the Bronx with cars parked on either side. And as we're playing the game, you start hearing sirens in the distance, and the sirens are getting closer and closer and closer. And so we stopped the game for a second, and we're all wondering what's going on with this siren going on. So all of a sudden, down the end of the street, this car crashes into the light pole. And we're just sitting there going, oh shit, what the hell? Two guys jump out. One guy starts going up the hill where they crashed, and the other guy starts running towards us. And as soon as the car crashed and these guys started running, a PD car stops. One cop goes after the guy running up the hill, and the other cop starts running towards us. So we hear him. We're just sitting there, wide-eyed kids, going, "Oh shit, what the hell is going on?" Right? And here's this cop running after this guy, and he goes, "Stop, stop, or I'll shoot." And the guy just keeps running. Right? This cop takes out his gun. Right? And we're watching shit. And he goes, boom, up in the air. And he goes, "Stop, I'll shoot you." And he goes, boom, again. He shoots again. And the guy just freaking drops on the ground. "Please don't shoot me," right? And the cop walks up to the guy, cuffs him up, picks him up by the back of his neck, and he just starts walking him back to the police car, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm going, man, that's what I want to be. And that's when it hit me that I wanted to be a cop. Now I'm telling the story in my retirement party. You got to realize that in Troop NYC, you have all these NYPD bosses that are in the front row with our then Superintendent Kevin Bruin. Now, remember that name, Kevin Bruin. It's very important when we get to the next story. So Kevin Bruin is sitting there with all the NYPD bosses, and when I went up there, everybody took a deep breath because they don't know what I'm going to say. And it said one of the first things I said was, since everybody else came up here and said, "Okay, thank you," and that's it, and I know they're allotted some time, I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk to you guys because I'm not just going to say, thanks. And I said, but don't worry, guys. And I pointed to the front. I said, it's not going to be anything crazy. So anyway, when I get to telling the story about how I wanted to be a cop, I could see all the NYPD bosses were sitting there going, "Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you wanted to be a cop, right?" Anyway, fast forward about 4 years now, not even 4 years, 2 years. And we used to, as a family, we used to go to some place which we call the farm in Newburgh. And it used to be a farm, but now there's all these bungalows that are up there. It was owned by a Greek lady. And just like the resorts up in the Catskills, uh, a bunch of Greek families would go there. The men would come up during the weekends and go back to work. The families would stay there for the 2 months that we were up there. Now, our bungalows were a whole lot different. There was no electricity. There were no bathrooms. There was 2 rooms with 2 beds and one room like a kitchen with a stove. We had an actual ice box where the iceman used to come and put a block of ice in the ice box to keep things cool. Um, and if you had to go, it was off into the woods. That's what it was. But it was great because they had these huge bonfires on the weekend. When the men would come up, they'd bring steaks, octopus, all that stuff, and it was great. But on the way up to the farm one day, my father's little Ford Fairlane is 6 cylinders, putting along with all of us in it. And as we're driving along, here comes this car, just blows the doors off of my father's car. And remember, this is the same story I'm telling at retirement with the NYPD bosses. And after this car blows by, I'm going, wow, what the heck was up with that guy? This blue and gold, because they had the blue and gold scheme back then. This blue and gold just comes by and blows the doors off of us again. I'm saying, holy cow, what was that? I couldn't believe what it was, right? And then a little bit further down the road, as we catch up finally, we see the blue and gold stop behind that same car that was came by at first. And my father obviously is slowing down as we come out. And I don't know how tall this trooper was. He could have been 5 feet for all yeah, he could have been. But as he gets
Yeah,
out of the car, he looks like a giant to me. And then when he put that Stetson on, now he looked like 10 feet taller. And he
yeah.
started walking up to that car, and I was like, that's what I want to be. And that's how it became. I wanted to be a trooper all my life, and that's how that started out. And that took a little air out of the NYPD boss's balloon when I said that. But yeah, that's how it came about. Mm.
That's awesome. So, you mentioned, it sounded like you mentioned you had siblings. How many siblings you have?
I have two brothers and a sister, and the funny thing is, my father, my mother, both born in February, and then I'm born in February. My brother is born in February the next year, 64. My sister comes along in 65 in February. So we're all February. But then we get on the boat, come over here. The Christopher Columbus is what we were on. I ended up getting seasick on it. It was just like in the Titanic, you're in the steerage. So we're down below and you can see the waves on the portholes. And you're like, oh man. So anyway, we're all born in February. And then they took a little bit of a break. But when we got here, my youngest brother, who was the only one who could become president, was born in September of 67. So yeah, two brothers and a sister.
So, minus what you talked about growing up in the Bronx, as you progressed into your later years, what did you get into, whether it be in high school or college? I understand you were quite the athlete. What sport was your favorite there?
Well, I mean, right away people think Greek, you're going to be a soccer player. But when we got here, I mean, I'm 3 years old, so I don't know anything about soccer. I started playing whatever sports my neighbors were playing, and here's where I fault my neighbor a little bit. We're living in the Bronx, but for some reason he likes the Mets, and I still curse him to the day that I grew up liking the Mets. I did get lucky though that he liked the Pittsburgh Steelers football team because I grew up liking the Steelers football team. So I did enjoy that. But I played little league, and then we would go down. My house was right next to the Marble Hill houses, which is a projects. We would go down into the projects and play whatever was in season: basketball, football, baseball, softball, whatever was in season. At around, I'd say 12, 13 years old, my father said in his Greek accent, "Now you play soccer." I was like, "What?" I said, "You play soccer now." So he took us to Astoria and hooked us up with a soccer team, my brother and I. And we started playing soccer over there. And the funny thing is, um, we had after a year of going to Queens, now we have to go down to Stuyvesant Town in Manhattan. So you have me, I'm 12, 13, my brother's 11, and you have these two kids getting on the A train at 207th and Inwood in Manhattan, taking this train at 6 o'clock at night all the way down to Stuyvesant Town, Alphabet City down there, because we had to go down to the river by Con Ed, play soccer, get back on that train, and come back home. We're getting home midnight, 1 o'clock. I mean, can you think about that? Like 12-year-olds getting on that
Now,
late
no.
on the subway
Yeah.
and going at it. It's yeah, no way. Say, but we had a great time. We never saw anything crazy on the subway. Well, I mean, rats running around, huge rats, but not anything crazy. Now you get on the subway, it's ridiculous. So I followed soccer in high school. We came in second place in the PSAL championship, which is all of the high schools in New York City. I made the all city team there. Then I started playing semi-pro for a while. Here I am, 17 years old, playing semi-pro with some of these Greek teams, and these Greek teams they were crazy, and even some of the other teams that we were playing with the Cosmopolitan League, and then we branched off to the Greek League. They would bring players over from Greece and other countries, whether it was Germany or Hungary or whatever. The South Americans even were coming over. They were paying them big bucks to come over here and play in these leagues. So the competition was at a very high level because you didn't have the professional leagues like the NASL yet, the North American Soccer League with the Cosmos and whatnot. So that came a little bit later on. But yeah, I made the All Star team with the Greek league. We played against the Greek Army team. That was one of my father's greatest games that he watched me play because I made a save on one of their best forwards who was playing on the national team at the time. But yeah, and then I followed through with in college. I went up to Orange Community College because a friend of mine that I played with the Greeks was there, and just as I get there, the coach gets promoted to athletic director, and James Migley. What a great guy there. A lot of people in Orange County know James Migley, and they put um, a guy in charge who I think was a volleyball player. But we still had a decent team. But a couple of my friends from high school went to Ulster Community College, and I probably should have gotten there at first. But when we went to Ulster, that's where we had a bomb squad. The legendary coach George Visvari. Everybody knows him in Ulster County, and actually they know him from around the country. That guy's a legendary coach from Hungary. He escaped during the Soviet occupation of Hungary, and he tells the story. It's a great story. But with him in charge over there, I think that year we came in fourth in the nation. We lost to the eventual champion, which was Mercer Community College in Jersey. We got and it was at their field, and we got home refed on one of our calls that went against us, and we ended up losing there. But now I had a great time playing soccer.
So you get through with college. At what point do you only go and try to get on the troopers, or do you try for other agencies as well? And when
So
does that happen?
I took the NYPD exam. I started to go through their processing, and I also took the trooper's exam. The PD called first. When I went down there for my medical, they said that I had a problem with my hearing. It was a little bit off. Yeah, I had never had any problem with my hearing. So then I get called to go up to the troopers. And I don't know if they did it with your class, but the hearing test was right in the main lecture hall. They had the machine there, and they had guys, placed in different spots in the main lecture hall. So I put it on. It says, and then I passed that with flying colors, and I ended up getting on the troopers after doing all my testing up there.
Now, what year did you actually get on? How what's the time frame from the time you tested until the time you get on? When was that? Was it a long time?
It was a little bit. I'm trying to think. You know what? It wasn't that long. I would say maybe 5 6 months. Because my
Okay.
EOD was 9/21/87. Yeah,
Okay.
and I think I went up and tested sometime in '86, so it wasn't too far off.
Yeah. So then let's talk about your academy experience. Tell me about the best part of the academy, and I also want to get into maybe I don't want to say the worst part, but maybe the most difficult part for you. Probably not your PT, probably not firearms, but we'll get into it. So, what was your favorite part of the academy? Do you think?
Well, I definitely enjoyed firearms, but I wasn't that great of a shot back then. I enjoyed the academy um, a lot, even though the academy back then compared to the academy now was a whole lot different than it was back then. Our BMO was Harry Corbett. When he first came out in the main lecture hall and walked on it, the first thing that caught my eye were these glistening Bates shoes that used to be issued to us. But not only that they were glistening, but he had these Vibram soles on them that were like that. They just made him look even more tougher than he was. He had this very very dry sense of humor that I'd never experienced anything like him before because we would get called into the main lecture hall. Now, remember, at this point, we're still in our suits and our business attire. I think, with our class, it lasted quite a while because they didn't have any of those Dickies ready for us yet. So, anytime they caught somebody, say, sleeping in class or doing something other stupid thing like forgetting to salute an officer as we walked through class, we'd be sitting in the main lecture hall after dinner, And all these infractions that had occurred during the day, they were all written down, and they would call people up, and they would tell them, "says Oh, you didn't do this, and you did this." And the first time I'm just sitting there, I didn't get caught, obviously, but this the first time I'm sitting there, they made two of the guys duck walk around the main lecture hall. And Jay, I just freaking lost it. I just started cracking up. I'd never seen something like this, and I couldn't. It's like one of those uncontrolled. I couldn't control myself. There was no. I thought I had good self control, but I could not stop laughing. And it was like, who's that laughing? And they're like, sir, it's me, sir. And he goes, get up here, get up here. So I had to go do the duck walk. The same thing, right? So then maybe a couple of days later, now they caught a couple of guys sleeping in class. So now they get them up on the stage, and they tell these guys, go back to your room, bring your two sheets and a pillow. So they bring, these guys come back and they put their sheets down. They make their bed. Corbett tells them, make your bed with the pillow and everything. Now, I just want to test you guys. I want to see if you guys are up to this. So he takes his whistle and he says, every time I blow the whistle, go to sleep. Go to your bed, go to sleep. When I blow the whistle again, though, I want you to stand up as quickly as possible, make your bed, and stand at attention. You got that? It says, sir, yes, sir. So he says, okay, get ready. And he's got that nice voice, calming voice right now. Blows the whistle, and slowly now they get in, and they pick up a sheet, put it over them, lay down on the pillow, and they close their eyes. And he turns around to us. He goes, very, very good. Now I'm trying to hold this in. Now, because I know what's going on. I'm not trying to hold this in. And then he blows the whistle again. These guys get up nice and easy, make their bed, and we're standing at attention. He goes, very good, very good. We're going to do that a little bit quicker now, so be ready, okay? He goes, blows the whistle, right? Boom, they jump in bed, right? Blows the whistle right away. They jump back out, and they say, oh, you didn't make your bed. Do it again. And he starts blowing the whistle back and forth. And these guys are jumping up and down. I'm putting my head down, trying to crack up, and they going. One of the counselors is right next to me because he knows I'm going to be cracking up. He says, and he's looking closer and closer. He's got his head closer and closer to me. He goes, I said, I'll just go get my sheets, sir. Is that okay, sir? He goes, go get your sheets. I had to go get my sheets too, and we can go back up there and do the same stupid shit. But that was some fun stuff in
Yeah.
the academy.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had
How'd you feel? Yeah, there's you, and it's also what you make of it, right? Like you can be a woe is me guy, or you can be like, that's what dreams are made of. Like that's how you make the most of a moment, is when you like, all right, I'm getting PT'd here, let's go.
one of the worst PT sessions that I ever had was my roommate Tim Hendrickson and I. We were constantly late to morning formation, no matter what the fuck we did, and I don't know what it was. It was maybe it was mental. We were constantly late, and Dennis Mosner was the counselor that kept an eye on us, and every time we came late, the whole class would march in formation to the flagpole, but he would keep us back, and we would have to stay in push-up position the whole time until the class came back. So, how smart I am and Tim is. We're in push-up position. We wait for the whole class to get out of sight, and we stayed there in push-up position for a little while, and then we turned to each other and said, "Fuck this shit." So we all got up and everything. So once we hear them coming back, we'll freaking get back in push-up position. So we're standing there bullshitting for a little while, and I don't know what it was. I took a quick glance up, and Mosner was at the window watching us. I'm saying, "Oh fuck, we're fucking caught, man." It was done, right? So we went back into bishop position where we were caught, but he didn't let on that we were caught, right? So we go to lunch, and that day I remember it, man. We had freaking mac and cheese and everything. We were going to the range after this, so we had mac and cheese. I'm loading up. Tim's loading up. And all of a sudden, our names get called out. Kakavas, Hendricks. I said, sir, yes, sir. I says, go change in outdoor PT gear and meet Trooper Kaufman in the gym. I'm like, oh my God. And our outdoor PT gear back then was gray sweatshirt, gray pants, sweatpants, and your sneakers. So here we are full. We run back, get changed, and we go back out. And Kaufman's sitting there with his freaking shit-eating grin, and he says, I understand that you guys are coming late to formation. Well, we're going to change that behavior right now. We're going to see if we can modify it. And he had us doing everything you could think of, mountain climbers, push-ups. It was crazy. And then to finish it off, we had to grab the heavy bag and go back and forth in the gym, back and forth. Finally, when we did the heavy bag, he puts us again in push-up position. And I tell you, Jay, it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. And Hendricks was a former Marine, and he had just gotten out of the Marine Corps. And we're sitting there, sitting. We're in push-up position, and I'm about to just let go. And Hendricks looks over at me and says, "Don't let them fucking see you let go, man. Don't let them see you fall. Don't let them." And as soon as he said that, I said, "You're right." Now I don't know what it was when he said those words. I freaking got this new strength and whatnot that I was able to stay in push-up position until finally Nick actually got. I ended up being good friends with Nick later on, but Nick got frustrated. And he says, "All right, you two, get the fuck out of here. You got firearms, right?" So as we're going back to our rooms, it looked like we were in a rainstorm because we were all completely drenched, and I mean, sweat was coming out of the cuffs of my sleeves and the pants. We were both done, and our session is coming the other way, dressed to go out to the range, get on that school bus that we get driven to the range and go out to the range, and they were looking at us like, "What the fuck did these guys just go through?" I mean, we were drenched. It was unbelievable, but it was that was one of the fun times, one of the tough times that we went through
Yeah.
at that academy.
Did you have a summer or a winter session? I'm assuming maybe summer.
It was no, we were September '87,
Okay.
so we went winter.
Yeah.
Um and again, we had some crazy happenings in that class. There was this one loner. Um I guess I could probably use his name now. Everybody will know him. He's off the job. Thomas Austin. He would always be a loner. We had people tried to talk to him, but he would always be off by himself. I think he's the one who asked whether or not we could use the TV one day, and so they had us go out into formation around midnight one night when we were all about to sleep. We're outside, and we had to do push-ups and all sorts of stuff because of him. We're lined up outside around midnight, and they have Austin in front saying, "Trooper Austin wants to know if we can use the TV in the lounge area." And well, we want to see if this comes about. So why don't you guys get in push-up position? And I think they had Austin call out the count. So a lot of people didn't care for him back then. But one incident with him at the range, I tell everybody, we were issued 357 Magnums at the time, and they were double action, which means when you pull the trigger, it's a very heavy pull on the pull. And I knew I was going to tell this story and another story involving the Magnum, so I've got my Magnum here. I'm going to show you guys. This is my actual issued 357 Magnum. I got my actual gun instead of somebody else's later on. But what I'm talking about a double action is the hammer is forward. Make sure. As you pull the trigger here, it's a long, heavy pull. So when we were close up, we're using that double action pull. When we went back to 50 yards, yes, we shot at 50 yards to qualify back then. You could shoot single action. And what that means is you would cock the hammer. Okay, now it's cocked. Now watch this trigger pull here. As soon as you just pull a little bit, that thing goes off. So it's a very, very light trigger when we're doing single action. So we have Larry Benson is our range officer. Now, Larry Benson was this crazy motherfucker from A Troop. And again, later on after the academy, when you got to know Larry, he was great. But man, he made us do some crazy shit on the range, especially if somebody fucked up. So we go back to the 50-yard line, and we're standing there cocking, single action, slowly squeezing, boom. And with this Magnum, fucking flame would come out of that freaking thing with the rounds that we were using. So as we're shooting, I'm on my third round. I shoot my third round, and then I hear over the loudspeaker, "Cease fire! ceasefire, motherfucker, you fucking crazy, cease fucking fire. Get that motherfucker off the line right now. I'm gonna kill that. I'm gonna choke that motherfucker. And we're all looking straight ahead. We're doing, what the fuck is going on, right? So you don't want to look left and right, because anytime you did that, the instructors behind you say, "What the fuck you looking at? Keep your eyes straight." So you didn't want to look
Yeah.
left and right. We're wondering what's going on. So I kind of looked all the way at the end, because Austin was all the way on the opposite side of me. They're pulling Austin by the cuff of his neck, dragging him off the fucking line after they made him holster. And then I find out what happens. He was shooting single action, and it was a warm day, and he's fucking shooting, cocking, shooting, and he's doing this. Cocking, shooting, doing this. There was a fucking fly flying around his head. He cocks the fucking Magnum, right? And the fly had landed on his head. And he fucking starts scratching his fucking head with the muzzle of the gun. Fucking Larry lost it, man.
Oh my God.
Back and forth over the little bridge. We almost got as fucking drenched as when we hit the freaking heavy bag with Hendricks and I, man. Oh my God, he was fucking horrible, man. But
That's
yeah, that's
bad.
one of the funny stories in the academy. In the academy.
That's horrible, actually. Yeah, but I think each class has somebody that has absolutely no experience and just no life experience in general and does stupid shit like that. Um, what did you find? Anything in particular that you found to be the most difficult part? Was it the scholastic, or what do you think it was? Or just the
Um,
routine of it, maybe?
no, I had a decent average. It wasn't too hard. I don't think I needed any remedial in any of the classes. I was pretty good with the classes. I did break my wrist boxing. I broke a small bone, a navicular bone in my left hand boxing, and obviously I reported it. And they took me to the medical center that was there, and the doctor said that it's a small bone. We can either put a cast on it, and you can continue the academy, or we can do surgery and you come back from the next academy. And I was like, nah, put that cast on, man. So I
Yeah.
would say for at least 4.5 months, I went through the academy with a cast on. Now, I could easily have, I can't do any more push-ups, can't do this. I did all of the physical stuff up until almost the last week, when and I don't know how he didn't know about it. Sergeant Corbett, I'm in push-up position with the rest of my session, and he's going around telling us why we're in push-up position. And he looks over, he goes, "Kakavas, you have a cast on your hand?" I'm like, "Sir, yes, sir." He goes, "Well, what the heck do you have a cast on you?" I said, "Sir, I broke my wrist back 4 months ago." He goes, "What?" And get up, get up. And for the last week, I wasn't allowed to do any more PT involving my wrist. So he didn't. He had no, I don't know how he didn't know about it. I thought he knew everything in that academy. But yeah, I went through the academy doing all the PT with a broken wrist.
Wow. Um, so you graduate, and where do you go to FTF?
So I go to SP Peekskill now. Um, Peekskill, and for everybody who's been through Troop F, Peekskill is like the Monroe of Troop K. It's an outpost down in northern Westchester, and what a great barracks to break in over there, because it was a complaint station, and it's I don't know whether or not they're allowing guys to break in highway stations now, but you want the guys to break in a complaint station so they could be, an all around trooper, handle complaints, all sorts of things, from a noise complaint up to a homicide. You're doing all that stuff in a complaint station. You don't want to just have a guy break in at a highway station going up and down. And my sergeant always used to say, yeah, the guys on the highway stations, all they do is make left turns, which, hey, sometimes he's right about some things, but you know what? At a highway station, you can make things what you make the job what you want it to be anyway, which we'll get into a little bit later when I go down to Hawthorne. But Peekskill was a fantastic place to break into. So when I get there, I'm there with two other recruits, and we have to report to our station commander. And if anybody on this job was a mentor to me, a second father to me was Bob Welsh, our station commander, and he's like he. And when we talk about good bosses, Jay, that guy is a great boss. So we get into the office, and remember, back in 87, 88. Now I'm in the barracks. You can't talk to any other trooper there. You're taught by your senior man because there's a senior man now is not FTO. He tells you don't talk to anybody unless they talk to you. You understand? You keep your fucking mouth shut. All right. You do everything that these guys tell you to do. Okay, sir, yes, sir. I'm still doing, academy shit, sir, yes, sir. So we get into the station commander's office and he's going through the names of the guys that are assigned there. I'm last. He goes, Trooper Austin, sir, yes, sir. Trooper Lynch, sir, yes, sir. Trooper Patton, sir, yes, sir. He gets to me now. He's Trooper K, K. You're John Cock. So what am I going to say? I say, sir, yes, sir. So that's, a lot of the troopers know
Oh,
Johnny Cock. That's where I
I
get the
was
name John
I
Cock.
was gonna say that, but I
So
didn't know where it originated from.
yeah, yeah. So now we leave and go into the squadron. And again, you're not supposed to say anything to anybody unless you're spoken to. So, you're an outcast pretty much until you start to fit in. And the first thing that two of the senior troopers start asking the other troopers is I'm the last one to get in there. He says, you play softball? Sir, no, sir. So, you play softball? Sir, no, sir. And none of them played softball. He gets to me. You play softball? Sir, yes, sir. I says, what position you play? I play anywhere in the infield, and depending on what type of pitching, I can fast pitch. He goes, really? He goes, where'd you play? I says, I grew up in the Bronx, playing in the Marble Hill projects. He goes, all right, we have practice today at 4 o'clock at down on Lentz Cove. Make sure you're there. Like, all right, what am I going to say? No. So I end up going to practice. I do pretty well, and back all of a sudden now I'm one of them now. The other three troopers, they still have to do the shit, not talk to anybody. I'm still abiding by it, but they're a lot friendlier to me than they are to them for the first couple of months. But yeah, that's how I broke in on my first day over in Peaksville. And then right away on A lines, which I never worked freaking A line, midnight shifts before. So I think it was like my sixth or seventh A line that I worked, and on the way home, because I was still commuting back and forth to the Bronx, I doze off and freaking go off the road and crash my freaking car,
Jeez.
so then I had a, and that's happened to quite a few troopers working A lines, but yeah, crashed the car in the first couple of weeks, um, but otherwise, that barracks. I mean, what a history that barracks has, and it was that barracks was where the good people loved us and the bad guys respected us because we did a lot of policing that went on at the Peaksfield barracks. Was not, hey, come in here, you're getting arrested. A lot of it was taken care of without arrests. Um, you'd get a guy. I got a guy. I forget what I got him for, but I have him at the barracks, and he's acting pretty stupid. So get up and you'll hear this a couple of times. Unsnap the keepers, put the gun belt into the file cabinet, walk over, give him a quick tap on the side of the head. I'll call it. And I said, "Do you want to get locked up or not?" He's like, "No, no, I'm sorry." And now he's being, polite. I says, "All right, then get the fuck out of here." He goes, "What? You cutting me loose?" I said, "Yeah, just get the fuck out of here and don't do what you did again." You understand? He goes, "Yeah." These are the kind of guys that, as you're patrolling, especially in the neighborhoods that we patrolled, it was very, very old school type neighborhoods. Verplank. I mean, that was very, very old school Italian, Irish down there. These are the type of guys that will flag you down a week or two later, which they did later, and said, "Hey, you know that burglary at such and such a place the other night?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Go see this guy about it. He's probably the one who did it." And they would, and we would always get tips like that with the type of policing that we did. There was no reason to lock everybody up. There was plenty of people to lock up. In fact, my first year there, I ended up leading the station with over 100 penal law. So I and I and listen. I was just very observant, and I enjoyed
Okay.
To me, it was like a game, especially growing up in the Bronx. I guess people say I had a bit of an instinct on things like that. I was able to see people ducking down behind buildings that some other troopers didn't see, and I would sneak up on them and catch them with some crack or some coke or something like that. And it was always a game for me, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But I always treated people right. I always treated people with respect unless you got out of line. And the only two people that I ever had a fight with were two drunk women. One was in Peekskill and one was in Haverstraw. And otherwise, I would just talk to you in a way where you knew where I was coming from, and I also didn't as we say take your balls away. And a perfect example of that is there was a bar in Verplank, the Windjammer it was called, and anytime troopers went in there, if you had to go into the Windjammer, you always got into a fight at the Windjammer. But you had to know how to talk to people. I had a complaint on a Sunday freaking afternoon. I thought it was going to be an easy day, and I always worked sea line, so it was like 4 or 5 o'clock. Some woman called up and said my boyfriend broke the window and the mirror to my car. I said, all right, what's this guy's name? She gives me the name. And this guy had a history of always rolling with the troopers, always rolling with the troopers, no matter what. It was like a game to him. Like, fuck. So I don't call for somebody else to come down there with me because I'm an idiot. I want to do this by myself. So I go patrol down to the Windjammer. I walk in and I see him sitting in the corner with another guy. I forget his name now, but I'll just call him James, whatever. I walk up to him and I say, "Hey, James, how you doing?" Looks up at me, goes, "The fuck do you want?" I says, "Just relax, James. I'm just here. I'm just trying to do my job. I just want to let you know, your girlfriend made a complaint at the barracks. All right, she said you broke her window and you broke her mirror." He goes, "Yeah, I did that." I says, "All right, it's not a big deal. All right, well, right now it's just a criminal mischief." I said, "But I got to do my job. What I have to do, if you just be cooperative with me, I'll take you down to the barracks. I'll process you quick because I got a fingerprint and photograph you, and then I'll give you a ride back right away." He's like, "Well, I'm going to finish my beer." I says, "Oh yeah, no problem. I don't want you wasting your money on this." So he finishes his beer, but he makes me wait. He wants to show his friends that he's making me wait, but I'm not showing any impatience. And then he gets up and he puts his hands out. I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Are you going to cuff me?" I says, "Are you going to give me any trouble?" He goes, I don't think so." I says, "All right, so then come on." So I bring him out to the troop car and then he goes to the back. I said, "No, just sit in the front." So I open up the door for him. He sits in the front. I get in the car. I drive him to the Peekskill barracks. I process him. I bring him back. And I bring him back. The guy says, "Can you come in for a beer with me, man? Nobody's ever treated me like that before." I says, "I would love to come in for a beer, man, but I'm still working. I got another 6 hours to go." And, and that's a perfect example, just treat the people right, and you won't have a problem. Now, imagine if I would have gone into that bar and I said, "Hey, James so-and-so, you're fucking under arrest, asshole." Now it's on. You're rolling around with somebody. So, but
True. Um,
have respect and
yes.
command the respect. That's the way
I
you.
mean, there are a few red flags there. You will admit that, right? There's, I mean, there's some, but I like that style. The only the only thing is that we can't get away with that today. There's no possible
eh,
way.
Too many
Back,
cameras. Too many cameras.
yeah, too many eyes, too many cameras. Absolutely. So how long do you do in Peekskill?
So Peekskill, I'm there. Let's see, 88. When did I go down to Hawthorne? I think. Oh no, I made a pit stop in Stormville for a little bit because Stormville at the time was the penal colony of Troop K. Whenever you got transferred out of someplace, I got transferred out because I was chasing around this one guy that was a real scumbag, and he made a complaint to Troop, and the major told me, I said, "Listen, I know the guy's a scumbag, but just lay off him for a little while." So I did, but I ended up, getting his friend a couple of days after I was told by the major to lay off the one guy, but I guess this guy made a complaint on me as well. So the major ends up putting me in Stormville for a little while. But with Peekskill, before we go with Peekskill, um, there was this other. There's some areas like Verplank was really nice. It was a nice place. but you had on the North Post, what were these cottages called? I forget what the cottages were called. They were little colleges, but they were very, very low income housing. And whenever we had a complaint in there, you'd go in there and the places were a mess. You had garbage all over the place. A lot of times you'd see needles in there. I mean, you didn't want to go in there. Yeah. So I get a complaint for a burglary at this cottage, Lakeview Cottages. That's what it was called, Lakeview Cottages. So I go there and I knock on the door, and this little old lady opens up the door. And I said, "Hello, ma'am, Trooper Kakavas." I said, "You had a burglary here?" She goes, I think so, but I'm not sure, Trooper." And back then, they were people were very respectful. They called you Trooper all the time. And I walk into this place. Place was immaculate. It was clean. Everything was in place. So I start walking around. Said, "Well, was there anything taken?" And she says, "Yes, my VCR was taken." I said, "Nothing else, just the VCR?" She goes, "Yeah." And so I looked at the door. I'm looking at the window. "So you lock everything up all the time, ma'am?" She goes, "Yeah, I do." So I go and do some interviews with the adjacent cottages there. And before I do, I ask her, "Does anybody else live with you here?" She goes, "Yeah, my grandson Rodney." I says, "Oh, okay." So start doing area interviews, and to a T, every one of them is telling me that Rodney is a crackhead, and more than likely he took the VCR to go sell it at Bowman Towers. Now, Bowman Towers is in the city, Peekskill. It's a projects, and that place is like drug activity like crazy, like it was a projects in the Bronx, especially back in the crack epidemic. So I patrol over there to see if I can see Rodney, because that's where they say that Rodney hangs out. There's about 50 people in this park right across the street from the projects. So they see the troop car come up. I pull up, I get out, Stetson on, of course, and I start walking towards the crowd. Now, what caught my eye right away was that in the middle of the group that was there was this tall black male that had a bunch of people around him. And as soon as he saw me get out of the troop car, he turns around and starts walking away. He made a beeline in the opposite direction. But I'm there to do a burglary investigation. So I start talking to some the people there. "How you doing? I'm looking for Rodney. Has he been around?" And one guy pretty much told me, "Yeah, Rodney's been around, but he got rid of that VCR already." Says, "I tried to find out where he was, where he hangs out, and nobody would tell me." But that one black male walking away just, that piqued my interest. So I get back in the troop car. I go down the road for about 10 minutes, waited, and then I came back around the back way and stopped at the top of the hill, and I was watching what was going on down there. And the same thing, all these people were walking up to him, and it was a little far away, so I couldn't tell, but I'm pretty sure what was happening. I actually not pretty sure. I knew. I found out later he was doing hand to hand sales of crack. And then a car pulls up at the same entrance that I went into the park, and the guy that I'm looking at walks right up to the car, leans in, makes an exchange, and goes back into the park. And now the car starts coming up towards me in the troop car. so I so I look over at the guy who's coming by. It's the freaking U.S. postman that delivers the mail. He's looking at me, and his eyes are wide open, saying, I'm just shaking my head at him. So all right, now I know what's going on. So I drive down to that entrance. I jump out of the troop car, Stetson on, and start walking into the crowd now. And I see him, same thing. He turns around, starts walking away right away. And I said, "Come here, man. Let me talk to you a second." He goes, "Nah, man, you don't want to talk to me." I says, "Yeah, yeah, come here, son. I want to talk to you." And all of a sudden, this guy just bolts. And I start running behind him now. So he has to cross the street, and I cross the street. He goes into this parking lot. And now at the end of the parking lot is this 4 foot high fence that, if you jump over the fence, goes into a heavily wooded area right next to the projects. And it goes straight down in a hill for about a good 20 foot down from the level of the parking lot. So he jumps over and he starts going down this hill all the way down. And I jump over and I draw my magnum and I yell, "Freeze, you motherfucker, I'll shoot." Obviously, he's moving. So I shoot one in the air. Remember, this thing's like a cannon, right? As soon as I shoot it in the air, he freaking goes down face first and stays there. Says, "You move, you motherfucker, I'll shoot you. I'll shoot you. I swear to you." And then I start walking up this. Keep your hands up over your head. Keep your hands over your head. I get up down there. So I bring him back. I cuff him, and I roll him over a little bit, and I reach into his jacket, and he takes out, and I take out this big, huge bag of crack. Now, what I forgot to say was, as he turned around, he had his hand inside his jacket because he was going to try to toss it. So that's what got me thinking, hey, this motherfucker got a gun or what? Anyway, he's still laying there, and all these people come to the top of the fence there in the parking lot. I mean, there's 50 people there. And one guy's going, "Yo, man, the trooper shot the brother, man. Trooper shot the brother. Fuck that, man. He only got 6 bullets." And he says, "6, not 6." He goes, "6 bullets." And I turn around, I go, "Yeah, motherfucker, and the first one's right between your eyes." He goes, "Chill, chill, trooper. I was only kidding, man. I was only kidding." So then all of a sudden I hear all the sirens coming and the Peekskill PD shows up. So I lift this guy up. I searched him for any weapons, no weapons, just to, there's, I mean, he had a bag full, a Ziploc bag full. It ended up being like, I think it was 348 crack vials because they were using vials back then. We bring him to the Peekskill PD now, right? And now my station commander, Bob Welsh, comes with my senior man, Cesar Nieves. And now all these cops are around in there and us three troopers. And Welsh says, "All right, Cock, tell me what happened." So I start telling the story. And when I get to the part that I'm running in the woods behind him and I shoot one in the air, he goes, "No, no, 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 you shot at him." I look at him, I'm like, "Sarge," I said, "you know me." And now at this time now I'm a firearm instructor and a 308 rifleman. He goes, "Sarge, are you kidding me? If I shot at him, I would have hit him." He goes, "No, no, you shot at him." I said, "Sarge, there's no fucking way. I'm telling you, shot in the air." Now I'm hearing all the cops in back laughing. And I'm wondering, what the fuck are they laughing? I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay. All right, you're right, Sarge. I shot at him. I shot at him." Because we couldn't take warning shots. I don't know I'm sure we can't take warning shots now. So
Yeah,
so finally if we could,
definitely not.
yeah, yeah. So that was another caper that happened in Peekskill. Yeah.
That's an unforgettable one. Yeah, you can't make that one up. Jesus. So you do a little bit of time in Hawthorne, a quick stopover, and so you said Stormville.
Over in Stormville, and on my first day there again, I think I got 4 pounds of marijuana on my first day there on a B line, which I'm surprised. I hated working B lines. I always liked working C lines, which is for you. A lot of the new guys don't know what that is. A line 11 to 7, B line 7 to 3, and C line 3 to 11. Now C lines were great for the guys who wanted to hang out afterwards. You'd work your tour 3 to 11. You'd come back to the barracks and bullshit for a little while, and then you'd go hit whatever bars that we were hitting that night. And nobody got crazy or anything like that, but we did some crazy things in the bar, but yeah, that's why sea lines were so good. But after I make my stop in Stormville, I go down to Hawthorne because it's closer to home now. I'm still living I'm living above a I'm living above a funeral home with two other troopers. The funeral director was a great guy who loved the troopers when I get to Peekskill, and he has an apartment above the funeral home. So there were the three troopers that were living above the funeral. And one trooper moved out, and we had a city of White Plains cop who transferred over to Westchester County PD. But we had a great time at the funeral, and there's plenty of stories at the funeral that could be told as well. But yeah, I get sent to Hawthorne with by Major Ketchum, who was a great troop commander down there. And I hit the ground running in Hawthorne as well. I think on my first day there, I got seven scratches with two different traffic stops. And then it was it was just such a different thing because Hawthorne obviously is a highway station, but
Real quick,
Peekskill,
John.
yeah.
Real quick, for anybody, any police officers or newer generations that don't know, John said he got 7 scratches his first day. So I'm going to translate that to anybody that may not know. That means 7 arrests on his first day there at the station. So I actually was going to bring up the different shifts and what times they were before, but you clarified that. So thank you. So go ahead.
It's in Peekskill. When I was making arrests there, you had to work. You had to do a little investigation. You had to do a little digging. It wasn't all roadkills. In Hawthorne, and I asked somebody there, what was the most arrests anybody made in a year down here? And the guy who ends up partnering with me later on most of my A lines, this guy Tomas Rodriguez, he told me there were 8. I says, "Oh wow, in one day?" He goes, "No, no, for the year." I'm like, "You got to be fucking kidding me!" I said, "Somebody, the highest number of arrests for a trooper here in one year was 8." And I couldn't believe it. And this was after their hammer down there when I was in Peaceville was this guy Ron Bethune, who was a hammer down there. But after Ron left, nobody was really arresting anybody down there, and I couldn't understand why because I used to patrol and sit and watch cars and it was like, oh man, there's definitely something up with this car. So you would just follow the car until you observe the violation and stop the car after the violation and somehow or other, whether you see marijuana seeds, whether you see some other contraband in the car, you got it in the car and you will make I was making arrests, guns, drugs, all sorts of things down there in Hawthorne. It was like shooting fish in a pond in Hawthorne. I couldn't believe how easy it was.
Mm.
So much so that um, uh, I guess when you get your station average, you're supposed to be at your station average. I'm doing so many arrests that I'm not hitting my station average in V and the station average down there was 50. So the station commander was Bob McAllister was his last name. I think it's Bob was his first name, but there was another line sergeant there who starts breaking my chops about my V and T. And granted, listen, I'm doing no less than 35, but why aren't you hitting 50? Why aren't you hitting 50? And next thing you know, I told the station commander. He asked me, "How you doing, John?" I says, "I'm doing all right, except I'm getting my balls broke over here for my V and T." He goes, "Who?" And I told him the sergeant. So he says, "Don't worry about it. It's taken care of." He goes over there and tells her, "Hey, this is the only guy fucking making arrests out here." I says, "Don't worry about his fucking V and T. He's got decent V and T anyway, but leave him the fuck alone." So thank goodness, he stepped in and took care of me that way. But we had some good sergeants there. Jake Coletta, I think it was Bob McAllister. Bob McAllister's a good guy. And it was a good barracks. It was a fun barracks. And that's how I got. I guess by making all those arrests again, the major still there is Major Ketchum, Ray Ketchum. He was from Troop F, which would explain a lot. But I guess with his recommendation, real stories at Highway Patrol come to the barracks. They tell me that they're gonna ride along with me for one of the episodes. So when they get there, and remember this is back in like I think '93. So the camera guy has this big, huge freaking Sony camcorder, whatever it was, and the mic, the guy who's got the mic has this freaking long ass pole with that big furry mic on,
Big
because
boom.
I was driving 4K7, which was a Camaro at the time. And I like, oh, wait till these guys get into the Camaro, they're gonna love it. But how are these guys gonna get into the Camaro with this freaking huge camera and mic? So now I got to use the other car that I was assigned to, which wasn't uh, that much off the Camaro performance anyway. I got the first Caprice with the LT1 motor in there, which was that thing was a beast as well. So the first day there, they come in, we jump into the car, and we start driving south on the Sprain Parkway. And they told me that they had just come from Rhode Island after about 2 or 3 weeks up there. I said, "You guys get anything good?" And they go, "Nah, not really. We didn't get much at all out of there." I says, "All right, well, this barracks is right next to the Bronx in the city, so I'm sure we'll get something. Is there anything that you guys don't want to do?" And they go, "No DWIs." I said, "Really? Why? What turns you off about DWIs?" He goes, "Oh, they just take so long to process." I said, "Are you kidding me?" I said, I get a DWI in 1 hour and it's done. Don't worry about it. If we get a DWI, don't worry about it. Anyway, I take them down on the Sprain and we continue on into the Bronx River Parkway because I want to show them a little bit of the Bronx. And we get off at 233rd Street where the Montefiore is, and we start heading back north on the Bronx River, eventually back into the Sprain Parkway. And as we're driving along northbound, I turn to them and I tell them, "Hey, how about an exotic car stop? You want me to stop an exotic car for your first stop?" They're like, "Well, there's, I think it's an Acura NSX coming up behind us with no front plate." And they're, "Yeah, yeah, sure, why not?" So I waited until we got to Tuckahoe Road, and I light the car up, and the guy pulls over right away. I let him pass. The only man I could catch was that it was a black male driver. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It's a black Acura NSX. It was one of the supercars back in the day. He pulls over, but he leaves a little bit of the car still on the roadway. So I'm behind him with the lights, and I'm on the loudspeaker telling him, uh, "Operator, pull over to the right a little bit more." Doesn't do it. I repeat, "Operator, pull over to the right a little bit more." And then all of a sudden, the freaking car takes off, and this thing just takes off. I'm like, "Oh shit!" I threw it into drive and take off after him. And on the video, you can hear me going, "Ah." No, so I go 4814 Hawthorne. Be advised, I'm in pursuit of a black Acura NX northbound on the Sprain Parkway, north of Tuckahoe Road. I mean, this thing left me in the dust. It wasn't even a contest. So as I come around this one corner, I see this freaking like cloud in the air. All the cars are stopped, and but I don't see the Acura. The only thing I do see is a dent in the guide rail. So I stop the troop car right there. I have to unlock the door for these guys to jump out. And again, you ever watch the video? Stetson is on. I jump out. I look, and people are pointing down towards the reservoir. There's a reservoir down there. I jump over the guide rail, and to their credit, these guys jumped right over with all that fucking heavy equipment on and the mic, and they just followed me straight down. Into, I mean, we're talking like jungle brush in here. We're moving shit out of the way. I'm going down there, and I see the car all the way down near the shore, just before the the reservoir. It had flipped on its. It was on its roof, resting against the boulder. Now, if the boulder's not there, that it crashes into the side, it's probably going into the reservoir. So as I'm getting closer to it, I see movement underneath the freaking windshield, and I'm like, "Oh man, I hope this motherfucker's not trapped under there. You know, he's trying to get the fuck out." So as I'm getting closer, and I'm looking. You know, I'm slowing down just in case this guy's got a gun. I'm looking, and it ended up being the wipers that were moving back and forth. That's what was moving. So I get to the car, I open up the door, I'm looking, there's nobody in there. I'm saying, "Holy shit, this motherfucker got ejected or what?" So I'm looking around because the drop from the roadway down to the shore has got to be at least a good 250, 300 feet. So, and he went airborne. And as I walked up the path that he came down, I saw there was like it must have been like a huge drainage uh, pipe that was there, that was a manhole. I saw that the car had hit that as well because the roof was like crushed all the way down, but he's not anywhere there. So now I got to look around for this guy in the woods with this camera crew behind me. And it's funny in the video that you don't hear it, but they're telling me, "Describe what's going on now." So you hear me talking, "Yeah, we're looking for this guy now here," and blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden, and this is one of the few times the piece of shit portables that we had worked. Uh, Halt on a 4K14. Yonkers PD has a black male up on Old Sprain Road, I think it was. They're holding on to him. Is that your guy? I said, "Well, can you give me a description?" He says, "Black male with a white shirt with it." Uh, yeah, that could be him. So jump back up top over there, get into the troop car, slide around to where this guy is. And as we're pulling up, Yonkers PD, they got about 4 or 5 cars out there. I used to work really well with the Yonkers PD all the time down there. I pull up, and they take this guy out of the back of one of their cars. This guy, like there was sweat beads all over him, his arms, his face, everywhere. They got him cuffed up, so I got to go over there and I gotta use my cuffs on him, and he's bleeding from his hand. Now, positive ID, I can't say positive ID because I only caught a glance of him passing by. So now I got to do something to see, is this the fucking guy or is this just some guy they caught running through the woods? So I said to him, "Hey, did you hurt your hand running through the woods?" Doesn't say anything. He says, "Ah, man, I mean, it's bleeding pretty heavy. Where did you cut it?" He goes, "Oh, I cut it inside the car when I was trying to get out the door." I says, "All right, now I got you, motherfucker." So that gave me my positive ID. But the worst thing now is I take custody of him, And back then, the troop cars had cloth seats in the back. So as I'm walking him back to the troop car, all of a sudden, this fucking stench hits me. He had shit his pants. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck? And the Yonkers cops are cracking up because he already dirtied one of their cars. So I was like, whoa, hold on a second. You're not going in yet. So I got one of those freaking yellow emergency blankets and put that in the back seat of the troop car and sat his ass down in there. But and then we were obviously born back to the barracks and processing. But they had a little bit of a ring going on. Him and his couple of buddies that worked in different dealerships. They would leave keys out for each other. One guy worked at a Mercedes dealership, another guy BMW. They would leave keys out for their boys to come and steal cars. So they were stealing cars that way is what they were doing. But yeah, that was the one episode of Real Stories at Highway Patrol down there in Hawthorne.
Was that during a day or was that during the night that that happened?
That's during the day. And then they did come back a couple times later, and I think the second episode was with Tomas Rodriguez. Now Tomas wasn't making a lot of arrests before he started partnering up with me on A lines, and then we just started going, you know, we were locking people up left and right. So Tomas now he's on. We're working a C line, 3 to 11, and he sees the crew come in. And I told Tomas, I says, listen, Tomas, if you get something, you know, give me a call on the radio and I'll bring the crew up there. He goes, oh, okay, man. No problem. So he goes out on patrol. I think not even 15 minutes later, I'm walking to the troop car with the crew, and he's calling for a backup northbound on the Taconic Parkway by Underhill Avenue. So we jump in and we start flying up the road now. And as we're moving, remember I have this this Caprice with the LT1 motor in it. It has a digital speedometer, and I wish I had the raw footage. I'm still trying to get the raw footage of this. And now I'm comfortable with these guys, so I tell the guy, I said, "Hey, pan over to the speedometer. I'm hitting about a buck 34 now, buck 36." And as he pans over, I said, "Why?" And I said to him, I said, "Because the fastest I ever saw on cops is like 96. I want to be the fastest on TV." And
Ah, that's funny.
yeah, thank goodness this didn't go to trial, because when eventually when we get called to go up to testify, it was in Albany. It turned out to be a federal case that they were doing these guys. The guys took a plea, but imagine sitting there in the freaking as the jury, and I'm saying, "Yeah, pan over. I want to be the fastest on TV." But I pull up to Tomas. He's got one guy out of the car, frisking him, and he tells me there's another guy in the car, and I grab him, put him in the back of his car, and I search him and cuff him up. And they had come down from Utica into the city and picked up this huge rock of crack. Man, it was like a bigger than a softball size rock of crack that they were going to chip up and sell up in Utica. But I guess they were. It was a state case at this point, but we found out later that they were part of a huge crew that was up in Utica, and the feds had the case. So
Jeez.
yeah, it ended up being a really good case with that one as well.
If I end up, I'm gonna Google. I'm gonna maybe go on YouTube to see if I can find your clip. If I do, I'll link it somewhere in this area, even if it's just a short clip, just so somebody can see. Have you looked on see if it's on YouTube at all?
I've tried to search for it on YouTube. I have a DVD of the second one with the drugs. Maybe somehow I can have my son put it on a flash drive or something like that and send it to you somehow. We'll figure some way out. But
Yeah, yeah, no worries. So at some point, then after Hawthorne, is that when you get promoted?
yeah, and I was I'm having a great time in Hawthorne. And it's close to home. It's not far, and I'm still hanging out with the guys in peace. You'll here and there. So I've got the best of both worlds, and I was told a couple of times to put my papers into the bureau, and I was just having too good of a time. I didn't want to go into the bureau. So I think, what was it, 90 95, a 14 comes out, obviously we're always curious as to who's on the 14, and I'll explain. A 14 is a list of promotions that comes out statewide and lets everybody know who's getting promoted. So I'm looking at the 14, and I see this one guy that I worked with in Peekskill, and never made any arrests. He barely made his number, but now he's going to be made investigator. And for those of you who don't know, when you make investigator, they give you a car, they pay for your gas, they pay for your tolls, and plus you get like close to, if not more than a $10,000 yearly raise. So I'm sitting there going, this motherfucker's going to be getting more money, a car, and they're like, that's what made me put my papers in for the bureau. And I got made investigator in November of '95, and I got sent down to our. We had our own narco unit in Whitestone, it was called, and I had already done a case. I had already done a case with them, well, for one of my traffic stops in Hawthorne. I was one of those troopers that, again, working 3 to 11, I was always hunting, and if I didn't get something that day, normally I stayed past the 11 o'clock, and sometimes 15, 20, 30 minutes still hunting like an idiot, even not getting paid. And one of those particular nights, I end up getting this Chevy Camaro that was northbound on the Sprain. I saw a couple violations on it, so I stopped the car. Um, it's this Colombian national that doesn't speak English hardly anything, just yes or no. And I'm observing in the back of a satchel that he had, a leather satchel that was actually open on the top. And I'm looking, I see cash and money orders. I'm saying, well, this is a little bit suspicious. I said to him, is this your money? And he can't articulate, what the fuck I'm talking about. Either that or he's, you know,
Playing
not,
the game.
not talking. So I take him out of the car. And when I take him out of the car, I sit him down on the push bumper. And I said, is it all right to look in your car? He goes, he does one of these, sure. So I go into the car. And as I'm going into the car, I'm watching him through the back window. And I see him, and I've already patted him down for any weapons, so I know he doesn't have any weapons. But I see him start throwing stuff on the ground, so I jump back out of the car. I walk over, and it's papers, small papers. So I grab the papers, and now I cuff him and leave him on there. And I'm looking through the papers, and his addresses, times, and addresses in California too. And there's an address in Poughkeepsie. So I grab the bag. I look into it. It was I forget how much cash, and I think it came to a total like $67,000 of the cash and the money orders. I call in troop narco to come down, which was he was also working at Whitestone. This investigator, but it ends up that this guy was going up to deliver this stuff in Poughkeepsie, and with the information that he tried to dump, 2 weeks later, DEA and I'm I want to say CHP made an arrest, a seizure for $6 million in Los Angeles a week later. So yeah, that was one of the reasons why the Whitestone crew also wanted me to come down there because I was helping out with a couple of their cases as well. But no, the Whitestone crew down there, and I had no clue. They had like a whole room full of machines, recording machines for telephones that they were on. They were on these wires that were down there that originated a few years earlier. They were making more seizures, quantity wise, than DEA and the FBI drug task force that they had down there because the FBI had their own drug task force down there. But that crew, the sieges that we were making were crazy. And it's funny because whenever we made a money seizure down there, which was pretty significant money seizures that we made, I never saw less than like 400,000 in a duffel bag when we made money seizures and we made traffic stops all off of these wires. But even 1 kilo of cocaine 1 kilo can always turn into a freaking chase and guns out, drawing, you move, motherfucker, you're dead kind of shit, all that kind of stuff. It was crazy. And I guess you could understand because whenever you made the stop, say perfect example, we're sitting on a house, and we know that this guy is going to be coming out with a duffel bag with $400,000 because we hear it on the wire. So we're waiting for this guy, waiting for this guy. We're one guy, two or three guys are parked on one end of the block, two or three guys on the other end of the block. And we see the guy come out. He's got this huge duffel bag. He opens up the trunk, throws it in the trunk, and starts driving away. So we let him go for a little while, and then we pull him over. Walk up to the car, the license registration. You take the documents, and then you ask him, "Is this your car?" He goes, "No." He says, "All right." I says, "Well, if it's not your car, can we search it? Do what you want. I don't care." He goes, "Okay." So we go back to the trunk where we saw this guy put the duffel bag in. We open up the trunk. "Is this your bag?" "No." I said, "Well, we have to look in the bag." He goes, "Okay." Open up the bag. Here's $400,000. "This your money?" "No." I said, "Well, we have to take it then if it's not yours." He goes, "Okay, no problemo. Just give me a receipt." We always had to give him a receipt. Make sure you get a receipt. Because he go back to the boss and say, "Hey, fucking troopers got the money. I didn't take it." So that's how easy it was with money, you know. But it was very rarely did we have to chase somebody when there was money in the car. If it was even the slightest amount of drugs, it was always a car chase, and it was just nuts whenever there was any drugs inside. But yeah, no, the time there was a good time.
How long did you do there?
I think about a year and a half, 2 years, you know, and then what was it? I get transferred to the criminal squad over at Maritime College, SUNY Maritime. It's funny. A lot of people didn't know that Troop NYC was stationed in a dorm on the campus of SUNY Maritime. We had the first two floors. The first two floors we had there. We had offices in there. So that wasn't bad because at the time my buddy was the soccer coach there, and I go across the athletic field and the gym are right next to each other, just separated by one street. And he uh, he says, "Hey, I don't have an assistant coach. Do you want to be my assistant coach?" I was like, "Fuck, I'm right across the street. Yeah, I can come at 4 o'clock." And he goes, "Oh yeah, that's when we start practice, 4 o'clock." So it was great. I was finishing up my office there, walking across the street, and that soccer coach that I told you about in Orange Community College, James Migley. He was the athletic director at OC when I went up there. He's the athletic director at SUNY Maritime. So it's like a great little group that we have there. And I'm getting paid to be the assistant coach. Plus, I'm getting, right there. So it was good.
So you get so what let's progress this then. Um what do you get involved with down there, and how does this story progress while you're in the criminal squad?
So while we're in the criminal squad, this is where I'm going to show you. I told you a great example of good bosses, Bob Welsh. There's some stories I could tell there, but I'm going to leave. But you got you should have Steve Nevins on. You had Eddie Rasso on. Great, great, great bosses. Um, but we had a new lieutenant come down who I worked with as he was an investigator in Hawthorne, and I was a trooper in Hawthorne. Um, one of his things was when he was a trooper up in upstate. I forget what troop he was in. I think it was C troop. He's a new trooper. He's got this young girlfriend, and I guess the young girlfriend got tired of his shit or whatever. Or maybe it wasn't performing well, is what I think. Anyway, she says I'm breaking up. So he says, "No, no, don't break up with me." He says, "That's it. I'm done." He calls her up and says, "If you don't come back to me, I'm going to kill myself." So she calls the barracks up. Troopers run over there. Says, "What the fuck is going on?" And, "Oh no, no, I was just kidding." Blah blah blah. Anyway, that's the first story we hear about this guy when he comes down. Not going to say his name, but it rhymes with dopey, and you put a K in front of it instead of the D. Anyway, he gets down to the barracks, and now he wants to, as a sergeant there, he wants to rah rah the troopers there to go out there and really kill it in tickets because he figures if he gets them to do this, it'll make him look good with division. I got down there and I freaking made the numbers go through the roof. So they're free. I mean, he comes in and numbers are the same, if not even less now with these guys. And he's like now he's going to start breaking balls. Hey, you guys got to do this. You guys got to do that. So one day I come in and man, I looked up on it. We had a blackboard back then. I look on the fucking blackboard and I started fucking cracking up. It said on there, if we don't go out and write enough tickets, Sergeant Dopey says that he's going to kill himself. So it was a play on his threat from upstate. Anyway, this guy, I'm in the criminal squad with this guy, Larry Johnigan. Larry Johnigan is kind of a Troop F legend from before I got there. You don't know him. He got a lot of time on, and he's a legend from DETF. He shot a guy, a drug dealer, point blank range, and he should have got the freaking Brummer Award for what he did down there. But they consider him after his shooting. I forget who he was signed, maybe VFW, but he came through a toll booth and got into it with somebody at the toll booth, at the throughway toll booth at Tuckahoe, and punched the window of the car, broke the window. So now he's on the bad boy list. So he gets sent to Troop NYC, the criminal squad, and everybody's telling me this guy's going to be a new partner. Now I don't know his history. I don't know about the DEA shooting. I don't know about I didn't know about the broken window and why he was being sent down there. So he comes on down, and him and I hit it off right away. Instead of just sitting around doing shit, we go right into the freaking files and start looking at warrants. We're going to go out and grab guys. We get a request for a warrant. Boom, we're out there. And the first day, we go all the way out to Staten Island and grab the guy on a warrant that was wanted for like 5 years. And we go out there the first day and we get this guy. So we were hitting. Larry and I, we just hit it off right away. And one in particular was the Connecticut troopers call us and tell us, hey, we're looking for a guy on a rape of an 80-year-old lady, and after raping her, he set the house on fire and killed her. He was dating the lady's granddaughter, and she was wealthy. He figured when she's not there, he'd go into the house and rob her, obviously. Well, she ends up being there, so he ends up raping her and lighting the place on fire. And they tell us that he thinks he's in the Soundview area in the projects, and we have a lead where he might be staying with his sister. So Larry and I, freaking homicide rape. Oh yeah, give that to us. So we grab it and we tell Lieutenant Dopey that we're going to be going out on this. So we go out. We go to the Soundview projects. We go up to this apartment, knock on the door, identify ourselves as always New York troopers. They say, who is it? Troopers. And they say, what? Troopers. Open up. We don't say police, troopers. So they open up, and the sister's being a bitch. But she has her girlfriend in the room. And Larry's doing the talking with the sister, trying to, tell her, I don't know shit, fuck you, pretty much, giving us the finger. But I'm looking at the girlfriend, and the girlfriend's doing one of these to me, like this. So I turn over to Larry. I said, hey, Larry, I'm going to go look through the house and make sure he's not here. Is that all right? And then I turn over to the sister. And I said, your girlfriend can come with me and follow me through. Just, make sure that I'm not doing anything I shouldn't be doing. And she's like, yeah, go ahead. Go. Fine. I don't give a fuck. He's not here. So I start looking into other rooms with the girlfriend. And when we get to the one bedroom far enough away, the girlfriend says, hey, he's not here, but he's going to be at such and such an address. It's a private house over here. He's going to be there in a few hours. But if he's not there today, he'll definitely be there tomorrow. I said, okay. So I come back out. Larry, hey, come on, let's get out of here. He's not here. Nobody's here. And Larry's like, no. I said, no, Larry, let's get out of here. So when I get Larry downstairs, I tell him, say, this is what's going on. He goes, oh, fucking great, right? So we go sit on this fucking house. We're working until 4:00 that day. So guy doesn't come at 4:00. We stay an extra 2 hours. We go back the next day to the barracks. We tell our senior what's going on. He says, okay, go out there and sit on him again. So we go out there and sit on him again. Again, we stay there till 6:30. Doesn't show up. So we go back to the barracks. And this time our lieutenant tells us not to take overtime. We have to change our shifts. And I look at him, I was like, I said, Lou, I says, you understand this is a homicide and a rape, right? And he's looking at, well, what do you mean? I said, do you remember when you were an investigator in Hawthorne and I was working with you as a trooper? He goes, yeah. I said, you remember when the kids were going out there and tagging graffiti on some of the overpasses on 287 and the thruway? He goes, yeah. He says, and you wanted to give us overtime to go out there and grab these guys who were tagging the overpasses with graffiti, but you don't want to give Larry and I overtime for this homicide? And we just turned around and walked out. That's a piss poor fucking boss right there. So
Yeah.
we did it on our own time. The next day, we went out there we went past the 4 o'clock, and we grabbed this fucking guy and getting in his piece. Sent letters down for us, thanking us and everything. But that's a perfect example of a good boss and an idiot.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Doesn't matter where you are in the state, they happen all over and every day,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Um, so walk me a little bit further through some progression through your infamous incident that happened with the federal agency. How does that come about, and where are you at in your career? How long after this does that happen?
So we've done a couple other cases. Larry and I, Pennsylvania called us on an escape out of a prison that we got down at Penn Station. We're doing really well, Larry and I, especially with the warrants. And I'm still coaching. Now, remember, I told you we had a championship soccer team in high school, and the first year that I'm there, uh, my buddy who was on the high school team with me has me come in there as his assistant coach, and he leaves to go to Lehman College as the head coach there. So the athletic director makes me the head coach there. So I bring another high school friend who was commuting from Fort Lee in New Jersey to come and be my assistant coach. So we're there for 2 months through tryouts and the first month of the season, and I haven't seen this one guy since my high school days that comes and shows up for practice. He's an Albanian guy. I knew him from my high school days, and my assistant coach had been hanging around with him ever since high school. You know, they were tight. And I should backpedal for a second. A good friend of mine that was an investigator with me at Maritime, Ted Epity. He's another guy that you all know in Troop F. Him and I were into the guns. We're into the guns, and every other day, I'm bringing something new to the barracks and showing it to him. He's bringing something to the barracks, showing it to me, and we're bullshitting. We're going to lunch together. We're having a great time. Plus, he's Greek, so we're getting along great. Two Greeks, guns. Well, where can you go wrong, right? Anyway, he comes to me with a rifle, uh, and he asked me, "Hey, can I sell this for him?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll ask around." So he gives me this rifle. It's an Uzi rifle. It's a semi-automatic. It's not a small Uzi like a machine gun. It's got the body of an Uzi, but it's got a long 16-inch barrel. It's a 9 millimeter. And he asked me if I could sell it for him. So I asked. I asked my brothers. I asked some other troopers, and nobody really cared to buy it. Nobody was interested. Anyway, fast forward a few months, maybe yeah, about 2 months, and I'm on the soccer field with my buddy, and his friend who I knew in high school shows up on the soccer field. And we, hey, what's up, man? I ain't seen you for so long, blah, 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 bullshitting in a while. And we end up going to hang out after practice. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. I say, hey, you want to buy a rifle? He's like, well, what kind of rifle is this? And I tell him what kind of rifle it is. Yeah, all right. I'll buy the rifle, and my father and I could use it. He says, all right, how much does he want for us? $900. He goes, all right, I'll buy the rifle. Anyway, I go and I give the rifle to this guy at his house in the Bronx. He gives me $900 in an envelope. I take this envelope. I slip it under the door of Ted's office, and that's it. Done deal. I'm guessing about 4 or 5 months later, um, this guy that I sold the rifle to gets locked up for some credit card shit. And then he had the credit card stuff that he was doing. He had an illegal pistol that had a defaced serial number, and he had the rifle that I sold him. And they're asking him about where he got all that stuff, and he says that a trooper sold him the rifle. So I get a call on my way to work one day from the FBI, an FBI agent, and says, "We'd like to talk to you about this rifle." So I said, "Well, hold on a second. I'm on the way to work. I'm going to call my lieutenant, and I'll get back to you." So I take his number down, and I call my lieutenant at the barracks. It wasn't Dopey. It was somebody else. And I asked him. I said, "Hey, the FBI wants to talk to me about this rifle." I said, "What should I do?" And he says, "Well, do you feel comfortable with everything?" I says, "Yeah, I don't think I did anything wrong." So he says, "All right, well then tell him to meet you at the barracks." Now that's my mistake number one, because anybody will tell you, and anybody who's listening right now, if any federal agent ever talks to you and says they want to talk to you about anything, tell them no, because they have that catch-all of making false statements to a federal agent as a crime. So if I go out there and say the sky is blue, it says no, it's gray, motherfucker. They can charge. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
Yeah.
any kind of thing that they think you lied about, they can charge you with that. I forget the freaking section that it was on that. But if I would have called Bob Welsh, and he still breaks my balls over it years later. If I would have called Bob Welsh, he would have told me, "Don't, no, tell me you're not talking to him. Don't ever talk to him." Anyway, I go to the barracks. There's two agents there. They were asking me about the sale, and the lieutenant asked me, he says, "Well, did you do a background check on the guy that you sold it to?" And I think it's changed now in the rules and regs, but or the nice bin regs, but it's if it's a rifle, you don't do a background check on a criminal history check on a guy. Only when we sold pistols to somebody were you supposed to do a criminal history on somebody. So if I did a criminal history on the guy that I'm selling the rifle to, it would have been a violation of the nice bin rules. So I said, "No, I didn't do that." And then I explained that to him. He says, "Oh, okay. Well, the guy's a convicted felon." I says, "Well, I haven't seen the guy in 15 years. I don't know that he's a convicted felon. That's not the first thing I asked him. Hey, are you a convicted felon or anything like that?" So they're like, "Okay, no, no, no problem." So they take off and they go back. And I had told them that the father was there and I had sold it to the father. So they take off. Anyway, when I get into the room with my lieutenant, he's like, "You sold that rifle to him?" And I said, "Lou, I didn't know this guy's a convicted felon. I made a lapse in judgment. Okay." And he's like, "Nah, you call those fucking guys back and you tell them this." I said, "So I do. I call them back. I leave a message for them. Say, listen, rifle, sold the rifle to the guy, and this is what goes on." Anyway, they're investigating me for forget how many months. But finally, I'm in my office, and this is where it gets funny. I'm in my office, and one of Seamus Lyon's favorite people, he's gonna have a laugh when he hears Captain Mark Smith comes into my office and says to me, "Hey John, can I have a word with you in the conference room?" I said, "Yeah, sure, Cap, no problem." So I go into the conference room with him, and another hero is there, Art Hawker. You guys all know him from Troop F. He's in there. And he says, "You know Inspector Hawker, right?" I says, "Yeah, how you doing, Inspector?" And the captain says, "John, we need to see the serial number of your gun." I think, "Oh, it's KX363US." That was my Glock 17 back then. He goes, um, "No, no, actually, we need to see the serial number." I said, "Cat," I says, "if you're suspending me, just say so." I says, "And I'll give you the gun and shield. You don't have to do this roundabout bullshit that you're
Yeah.
doing."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we always trained to draw quickly, no matter what, whether you're going to put your gun down on the table or whatever. Always draw quickly. So you're always, training that way. You're gonna also draw quickly in a gunfight. So I step back and I draw the gun out of the holster real quick, and they both jump back and they relax, fellas. I'm just gonna unload it. So I took the magazine out, racked the round out, put the gun onto the table, and I walked back to the phone in the back of the room. And Inspector Hawk says, "What are you doing?" I says, "I'm going to make a phone call." He goes, "No, you're not." I says, "Well, either I'm going to make a phone call here, or I'm going to go across the street to my office in the athletic office and make a phone call there." He goes, "No, you're not." I said, "Well, sir, I'm going to make a phone call one way or the other. This is because, am I under arrest by you guys?" He goes, "No, but the FBI is on the way." "Okay, that's fine." I said, "I'm going to make my phone call either here or in my office in the athletic office. And God, I hope one of you tries to stop me making that phone call right now." So they say, "Okay, go ahead, make your phone call." So I call Welsh. Welsh says, "Don't say another freaking word to him, blah, blah, blah. Okay, what do I do?" I says, "Just do whatever they tell you to do, but don't say a fucking word to them." I says, "All right, no problem." Hang up with him. About half hour later, the Phoebes get there. You'll hear that a lot, Phoebes. They get there. They have the two agents that were interviewing me, and this one gorilla that I believe was on their HRT team, their hostage rescue team. And they come up. They they search me. Um, I had been selling soccer gear on the side through Adidas. A friend of mine through Adidas, and I had just made a sale. So I had about, I would say, 700 in cash with me, and my keys and my wallet. So, "Oh, you got a lot of money there." I said, "It's not a lot of money, but I just made a uniform sale with the team that I play for. So it's really not a lot of money. It's just a sale that I made." So their antennas up because I have cash on me. Anyway, they handcuffed me in front, put me in a van, and drive me to White Plains. So on the way there, they're trying to engage me in conversation, and I told them, "Listen, fellas," I says, "I'd rather not have any conversation with you guys right now. Okay, I made it. I made my mistakes. Let's just get through with it. Whatever you guys got to do here right now." So now they bring me into the. Um, they're saying, "Don't worry. There's not going to be any press on this. No, don't worry about it. We're going to bring you through the back entrance." So when we get there, I'm looking and say, "Well, what the fuck you mean, man? There's no press out here in the first place." I said, "But they still
Right.
take me through the bottom. I got to go through the U.S. Marshal's office. The marshal has to process me." So the marshal tells the agents, "All right, take the cuffs off him, and I got a fingerprint and photograph him."
So John, real quick,
Yeah.
this is the part where I was told this is the part that I was told was the funniest part of the story, which I was gonna spoil it, but since you're into it and you're telling a really good story, I'll let you go. This is the kicker here.
So the first agent comes over, and I put my hands out, and he's trying to unlock the cuffs, and he's not unlocking them. I'm sitting there, going, and the marshal's in back. "Come on, guys, you got to get going. This is right before lunch. I got to leave in a little while." So he's trying to uncover. He took about a minute or so, maybe even more, to open the cuffs. He can't do it. So he calls his partner and says, "Hey, can you try your key?" So this guy comes over and he's starting to freaking try and unlock the cuffs. And he can't unlock the fucking cuffs. This guy's taking, again, 1 to 2 minutes to unlock the cuffs. So I finally said to them, I said, "Hey fellas." They go, "What?" I said, "Why don't you try my key?" They go, "What?" I said, "Yeah." So I reach over into my pocket with my cuffed hands, pull out my keychain. I said, "Try this key." So they're like, okay." So they take my key and they go click, click, open right away. And I guess you don't get much use out of your keys. And the freaking marshal just started cracking up like crazy. He broke down crying.
Well,
You
I guess
know,
they didn't search you that well either, now did they?
well, no, yeah, true. They let me
Right?
put my puff key right back in. So, uh, again, that's why I call them Phoebes instead of, whatever else they wanted to be called, because these
Yeah.
two clowns are. Anyway, the funny thing about this whole thing is that before we progress into the trial, um, the first U.S. attorney was a female U.S. attorney who looked at this case when the Phoebes brought this case to them. And she looked it over for a while. And she looked at it and went back to them and says, "You know what? This is not. I'm not prosecuting this case. This is not a good case. This is. I don't want it. I didn't want to do it." But with my luck, what happens is she gets transferred. And this is my attorney telling me all of this later. She gets transferred to New Hampshire, and a new guy comes in. And if you look up the word dweeb in the dictionary, they'll have a picture of this guy in there. Okula is his name. Now, when I look up that name, it comes back like that it's possibly Turkish. Now I'm Greek. He's Turkish, maybe. I don't know. When I looked up that name, it looked like it was on the internet. There's possible Turkish heritage there. So I don't know whether that had anything to do with it. But this guy takes this case and runs with it. So now, in the meantime, before this is how fucked up it gets, because somebody on the Facebook page with the retired troopers referenced my arrest and didn't know what the fuck I went through during this whole time. During this whole time, I ended up getting suspended for 2.5 years. There's a 30-day without pay in the beginning, another 30 days without pay at the end, but in between, I'm on paid suspension throughout this whole 2.5 years. So, what I have to do now before trial, I have to show up in White Plains, almost like a parole officer, to make sure that I'm not looking to hurt myself. I'm not looking to leave the state. All this stupid bullshit. And each time I go there, I'm like, "This is guys. I'm going to trial. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere." I think on the third time, the big goon from their HRT team, as I'm waiting to see my parole officer there, whatever you want to call him, he comes in and sits down next to me. And he's asked, he's like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like it was happenstance that he was there. Yeah, bullshit. He gets around to asking me, "How's the case going?" I says, "Well, I don't know, man. You should know better than I do." He says, "Well, I know, man. They look like they got you pretty good. I mean, would you ever consider taking a plea?" I'm like, "Is that what you came over here to ask me, whether I would take a plea so you could go back to your U.S. attorney and tell him that I was looking to take a plea?" No, I said, unless it's like a low level misdemeanor, I'm not taking a plea, because I still had it in my heart that I was going to come back on the job. I wanted, I didn't think that, hey, I'm done with the job. I still wanted to come back on the job. So I tell my attorney this about the encounter with the goon, and he says, "Well, let me look through here, and I'll let you know if I can find something. Because would you be willing to do a misdemeanor?" I says, "If it's a misdemeanor, yeah, because at least then I still have a chance to come back on the job. If it's a felony, it's a done deal. I can't come back on the job." So anyway, my attorney finds some obscure bullshit misdemeanor in the federal code. So he offers this up to this little dweeb U.S. attorney, and this cocksucker, what he does, instead of offering me this and saying, "All right, we'll let you plead guilty to this and we'll dismiss everything else," he actually fucking charges me with it. He adds that on as an extra charge. That's the kind of scumbag this guy was. So now I'm in limbo. And what happens next? 9/11. 9/11 happens, everything that's going on with 9/11. And I get a fucking notice in the mail now that my trial is starting October. I forget the exact date, but it's 1 month after fucking 9/11. And you know how the fucking city is now. I mean, the city is like fucked up. Trying to get down there. So I have my wife who's pregnant. Uh, my mother and my father, God rest his soul, with me, and we go down into the city. I end up being a half hour late because they have us going from one route to another different route. They have roads closed. It's ridiculous. I get there a half hour late. Now, again, before I proceed, um, obviously you get a choice of a jury trial or a bench trial. And me, I'm saying we should do a jury trial because there's got to be one person I can sow some doubt in with this bullshit case that they have, and it should be good. But then we did the research on this judge. This judge, and I owe everything to this judge, Judge Duffy. we did some research on him. My attorney did, and found out that he's, the son of a New York City police officer, and he's very, very tough. He destroys attorneys, is what he's finding out. But he's fair, and that's the one thing that kept coming back on him, that he was fair. So I get there a half hour late, and now I'm waiting for a half hour. And when he finally comes out, he says, "Stand up." Just looks at me and says, "Stand up." And I stand up, and he goes, "I know you're a trooper." And says, "But I'm going to tell you right now, if you ever come to my court late again, and I don't care what your excuse is, I don't care about the roadblocks out here. I got here. You need to get here. I will have a warrant out for your ass as soon as you're 1 minute late. You understand me?" I said, "Sir," I said, and I did, I reverted back to my academy and I said, "Sir, yes, sir." And then he turns around and leaves. So now I got to wait for him again. Now I turn around and I look at my wife. My wife she's got terror on her face. She goes, "Are you sure you want to do a bench trial with this guy? You got to be out of your mind." I said, "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." So he comes back out after about an hour, and obviously it's the U.S. attorney who's going to be putting the case on. And he goes outside before the judge comes in. He goes outside with his two assistants. He came back with this fucking cart, like a 6x6 cart with folders and binders and full of it. And they're putting this whole freaking thing in, and my wife is looking at me. I'm like, "I don't know what the fuck that is, but this thing is full of all documents and everything." I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So he gets up there and he starts making his case. He said, "I lied to the federal agents. I sold a firearm to a convicted felon. I ran this guy's license. The license? Yeah, the license. Oh no, the plate. I ran his plate on Niceman. That was a violation. What else did he get me for?" I mean, he put all sorts of charges up there on me. So we're going through the trials. And one of the first witnesses that he calls up is the special agent in charge of the group that was looking at me, which is the YAKS group, it's called Yugoslavian, Albanian, Croatian, Serbian burglary group that the FBI had a special squad for. And this guy, FBI agent, he ends up getting transferred up to Orange County after this trial. I don't know if it was because they lost or whatever, but from going to White Plains to Orange County is kind of demotion, I think. Anyway, he gets up there and starts telling everybody how he was a great cop in Pennsylvania. He was a great FBI agent, and now he's the special agent in charge of his YAKS group, and goes on and on and on about his qualifications. This is where I find out that this is going to be a good judge. The judge looks over at him and looks at him and says, "So how long have you been in charge of this YAKS group?" And he tells him, I think 5, 6 years, whatever. Says, "Oh, okay. So you know that the Albanians have an affinity for their firearms." I mean, I know, anybody knows Albanians love guns. Now, this guy turns around and goes, "Your Honor?" He goes, "Albanians, firearms, they like their guns. Um, I, Your Honor?" He goes, "Hold on a second. You're telling me you've been in charge of this group for 5 or 6 years, and you don't know that Albanians love their guns?" He goes, "Hey, well, go on, next question. Go ahead, next question." So he gets into it right away with him there. And then they start going on about how when they had interviewed me and they had gone back to their office and that they hadn't heard from me about leaving a message for them or trying to get in touch with them for a day or two. And then the judge looks over at him and says, "So you left Fort Schuyler at what time?" And he tells him, let's just say 11 o'clock. "And you went straight to the office?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "So how long did it take you to get to the office?" He goes, "I don't know, a couple hours." And the judge looks at him, "Hold on. Fort Schuyler's in the Bronx. You're telling me it took you a couple of hours to get back to your office in White Plains? That's a half-hour trip." He goes, "Go ahead, go on, go on. Next question." So he's hitting this guy up pretty good the whole time. Where during a recess, He's outside. Right? I forgot to say that my sister-in-law had also come down to the trial. She's in the hallway, and this guy, the special agent in charge. Fuck it. I can say. Is there any reason I can't say his name?
You do whatever you want. This is your world, buddy.
Palaza. I'll tell you a good story with him too. Palaza, because he was friends with a couple of the higher ups in Troop F. He's crying in the hallway, saying, "Oh, I can't believe a judge is going after me like this. What did I do to him? I don't know why." And he was fucking crying in there. Bilaza is the type of, there's cops who are agents, there's cops who are troopers, that go out there and do the job. And then there's guys like Bilaza and Dopey. Bilaza was told by his wife, and you can ask the guys who work in the FBI office in Orange County, if you want to continue working, I want you to wear your vest everywhere you go. He goes, okay, honey, I'll wear it every time I go out. No, 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 no. You're going to wear your vest everywhere, every minute that you're on duty. Hey, I'm going to be in the office. No. You're going to have that vest on in the office. You ask those guys up there. This motherfucker always wore his vest. I was told, even in the office. That's the kind of guy that he is. Anyway, as we progress on this trial, the first day was good. And then they're going to call up Eric Chibodi, who's now the undersheriff, Sullivan County. And Eric at the time was the communications officer, the tech sergeant at Maritime. So he was in charge of all the NISPIN stuff. What they didn't know was that Eric was also, he had a federal firearms license and he sold guns. So they get him up there to get me on the NISPIN violation. The first thing they ask him is, did you check the NISPIN tests that investigator Kakavas took? Yes, I did. Did he pass all his tests? Yes, he did. So I'm going to point your attention to this question here. Do you know that it's a violation to do unauthorized searches on NISPIN, or however it's worded? You can't run a guy's plate just to run a guy's plate.
Right.
So Eric, he says, did he get that question correct? And Eric looks and he goes, yes. He says, okay. And then he said, and then he gets done with that line of questioning, with the NISPIN violation. So I tell my attorney, I said, ask him if he has ever has seen anybody arrested for that violation. And my attorney's like, I don't know what he's going to say. I got to know the answer before I ask you a question. I said, Andy, I'm paying you. Ask him the question.
Yeah.
And it went back and forth for a little while because he didn't know what the answer was. He wasn't sure. And Andy is a great attorney. Andy Rubin, for anybody who knows, you ever get in trouble, you get this guy. So Andy finally relents and says to him, says, Sergeant Chibodi, I said, do you know if anybody do you know anybody else who's ever done this, whether run a plate or run somebody's license on the NISPIN system? And Chibodi goes, oh, I've seen it done thousands of times as when I was a police officer in New York City and when I was a trooper and a sergeant with the state police. And my next question that I told the attorney asked was, has anybody else that you know of over these thousands of times been arrested for it? Judge Duffy looks over at Sergeant Chibodi and says, and have you ever had anybody that you know of that did this violation, NISPIN, get arrested like Investigator Kakavas? No, Your Honor, nobody. So that freaking blew them out of the water with that. And then I asked, I said, because the feds brought up this sinister-looking rifle as evidence. They put it in evidence. So I asked him, I wrote down my question to my attorney. I asked him this. He goes, oh, no, again, another battle, because he doesn't know how he's going to answer. I said, I know how he's going to answer. Just ask him. Sergeant Chibodi, are you familiar with the firearm in question? Yes, I am. It says, and are you a firearms dealer? It says, yes, I have a federal firearms license. I said, okay. And how would you classify that firearm? It says, that's a rifle. I said, so it's not an Uzi submachine gun like the U.S., like the press release that the U.S. attorney put out. No, it's not a machine gun whatsoever. It's semi-automatic. You can't fire that automatic. It's a rifle, just like any semi-automatic hunting rifle that you want to get. If you wanted to get a hunting rifle that's semi-automatic, it's just the same thing, except it's in 9 millimeter and it looks bad because it's black and it's got a long barrel. So it's not a pistol. No, it's not a pistol. So Investigator Kakavas would have been in violation of NISPIN rules and regulations if he ran a criminal history check on this guy selling this rifle. Yes, he would have been in violation. And it says, so can anybody go into a store in New York State and purchase this rifle? Yes, Your Honor. They can go. All they need is a driver's license and they can purchase that rifle. That's it. No more questions. And that pretty much was the case that they
Yeah.
had me. But still, I don't know. Well, all I need to get convicted on is one misdemeanor, and I'm probably out of a job
Yeah.
because division had sent somebody down there to sit in on the trial the whole time. And they're there with a briefcase. I'm thinking that if I'm found guilty, that that lieutenant is going to reach into his briefcase and serve me with, hey, you're fired.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking. I don't know what he's there for.
Separation papers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So once you get that kind of sense of where the trial's heading, how much further does it last? I know you said your total time was about 2.5 years, but how much further does it last after that before you get a verdict
So
or,
it's no the
or
trial lasts
dismissed?
3 days. It's a 3 day
Okay.
trial, and on the third day we get and the third day is going to be the verdict. And I forget that doggone show. It was a British show, but I forget I forget the name of it. But I remember, I had the charges in front of me, and the judge comes out. He does his usual thing, get everybody settled in, and he goes, okay, well, on charge whatever numbers he called out first. I think he called out 4 numbers. I got hit with like either 6 or 7 charges. So he calls out the first 4 charges, which were the felonies, because I'm following him down. They were the felonies. He goes, I find him not guilty. I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna get done on the misdemeanors, but at least I didn't get done for any felonies, right? So then he goes, and on charges 7, 6, and 3, whatever the numbers it was, I finally feel not guilty as well. And then he just gets up, turns around, and leaves. And the freaking little prosecutor's sitting there going, what the fuck just happened? I'm turning around. Holy shit, what the hell happened? I couldn't believe it. And the one, my supporters that were there, obviously my family, and the one trooper that stood by me, out of nowhere from Peekskill, this guy, Greg Porteous, came there and sat in the trial the whole freaking time. And when we go outside, Porteous is getting a phone call from another investigator, Charles Griffo, that I used to be. He was a Peekskill trooper and he was an investigator at Whitestone with me. He goes, Greg, is it true? He goes, what are you talking about, Charlie? He says, did he really get exonerated on all charges? Is it true? Because that's what we're hearing all over. He goes,
How the fuck
yeah,
does he know
yeah.
already?
He's out. He's
Yeah.
fucking unbelievable. And
Yeah.
when I got done, because the U.S. attorney had put it in the newspaper, if you Google it now, you'll still see in the New York Post and the Daily News, it says trooper indicted in lies and sale of Uzi. They put it in the press after they told me they wouldn't do it. I was on News 12, Westchester News 12. They were calling me at the house to get a fucking statement from me. So when I got exonerated on all charges, I told my attorney, I says, I want to put fucking press release out there. I want to do an interview with fucking Channel 12 News. I want to get it out there. And my attorney, I mean, he's such a sweetheart. Duffy's court clerk. Remember, I told you this guy, this judge eats up attorneys. His clerk, after he walked out, came up to my attorney while we were when I was with the family and told him, I said, I don't know what you did and how, but I watched you in here. You were the only attorney that never got yelled at by this judge. I am very, very impressed with the way you handled this whole case. And that's the kind of attorney this guy is. But he told me, let's not, hit the beehive on anything.
Yeah.
Let's leave it alone because you still have your hearing to go to. So now, yeah, I'm done with the criminal trial, but now I got to go to a job hearing. So I got to sit there with Bob Welsh, Greg Porteous, and think about, I get to pick one. You know how it works. I get to pick one judge, and the job sends down 2. So the first thing that comes to mind, Bob Welsh says, well, how about the Troop L troop commander Walter Heesh. And I was like, yeah, I hear good stories about him. Yeah, that's a good idea. So Welsh knows him well, and he calls him up and he says, Bob, I said, I would love to do it, but there's no fucking way I'm going back and forth up to Albany for how many days I have to go up there. I'm not doing it. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not doing it. So now we have to get a second choice. And Welsh says, how about Captain John Noonan in Troop K? I says, well, yeah, I know him. He's a good guy, but I mean, you know him better. What do you think? He says, I think he'd be real good. Is good. So we picked John Noonan. The job picks Colonel Chrysler, and I think, if I remember right, it was a captain from D Troop. Mark Lincoln is the name that's coming to me right now, but I'm not sure. But then when they send me the notice where I'm going to go, it's fucking Troop L headquarters anyway. So he should have been the freaking guy anyway.
Yep.
So when I get down there, and remember when I told you that the brass that was in front of my retirement party when I was giving the story with the NYPD and our brass was there. The acting superintendent, or maybe he was superintendent at the time, was Kevin Bruin.
Mm.
Kevin Bruin is division counsel sent down there to prosecute me. Now, I should have said something during my retirement party, like, how do you like me now or something like that? But
Yeah.
I didn't. But he was the prosecuting division counsel that was there to get me off the job now. And I got to say, Welsh made a great choice in John Noonan because Bruin called the two FBI agents to come down there. And right off the bat, Noonan was asking them questions again in a really nice way, not confrontational,
Yeah.
about some things that went on with the case that caught them. I mean, caught them with their pants down. Caught them with their pants down. He when they talked to him when the agent gave his testimony, he said he asked him, says, "What did you ever read Investigator Kakavas's rights?" And he goes, no, no. I says, well, why didn't you? He goes, well, at the time he wasn't a target of an investigation. I said, hold on a second. You're looking at him for a sale of a firearm, right? He goes, yes. I says, well, would you say that's the target of an investigation? I said, yeah, well, I says, so if he was a target of investigation, you never read him his rights. And they admitted on the stand that they never read me my rights and that I was the target of investigation even before interviewing me. So they caught them in a lot of irregularities.
Yeah.
So I think the crowning thing during my trial, there was two things actually. Whenever we took a break, Colonel Chrysler, who I give credit to him. I mean, he's sent down there as the hatchet man, and Colonel Chrysler uh, was very personable to me. During the breaks in the lunchroom, we talked about all sorts of different subjects. Nothing about the case, but it was just like two guys just talking like regular people. So I felt good with him there. Actually, when they send somebody to freaking, be a hatchet man, you don't want to talk to somebody like that. But this guy, I actually felt good with. And then at one point in time, I testified as well and they told Bruin starts out with because my attorney asked me a few questions first, and then Bruin uh, uh, got in there and started asking me questions. So here you are, you're Trooper of the Year in Hawthorne. You're making all these arrests and everything, and you go and sell a rifle to a convicted felon. And I looked at him. I said, "Listen, sir," I said, "I made a lapse in judgment. Did I do anything criminal? I don't think I did anything criminal." And then he came back at me hard with something else. So and I think this is what won over Colonel Chrysler and the captain, because I knew actually Noonan was already on my side. I said to him, "says I'm going to tell you something." I told him, I said, I broke my ass in the academy to earn the right to wear my Stetson. Do you have a Stetson? And it's in testimony in the transcript. He goes, no, I don't have a Stetson. I said, and you don't know what I went through to earn the right to wear this Stetson. And I'm going to tell you something else. Whatever happens in this trial, off the job, on the job. I said, I'll know I earned that right to always wear that Stetson, and I'll always keep my Stetson. So you can't say that. And that was the end of the testimony with that. So when that gets over with, I don't know what's going on. It took almost, I think, 2 months. I'm on the freaking beach with my wife and on the Jersey Shore. Now after everything's over, yeah, I'm still getting paid, but there's so much uncertainty right now. I have 3 kids now. And I'm saying, what the fuck am I going to do, man? I said, if I get the verdict that I'm not on the job, what am I going to do? And I get a call from Welsh. He says, hey, word is you're going to get back on the job. I'm like, are you sure? He goes, yeah, I just heard from, don't tell anybody, but I
Yeah.
just heard from John Noonan that you're going to come back on the job. I freaking hung up that phone and hugged my wife. I said, "Oh my god, you're not gonna." I look like a lunatic screaming on the fucking beach. People were wondering what the hell was going on. I said I was gonna be a fucking trooper again, man. I just couldn't fucking believe it.
Yeah.
What a
So
feeling.
you end up getting reinstated. And then where do you end up going then after your reinstatement?
So the funny thing is, I get a call from Mark Smith, and he says he wants to meet me to give me back my shield and ID. Seamus's friend, and well, we have a meeting over at it's not there anymore. Friendlies on Tuckahoe Road in Yonkers. So I pull up, he pulls up, I get in his car, he gives me my shield back. Uh, Fucking scumbags and troop threw all my belongings in a black garbage bag. So I have all my personal stuff and some others, my troop shoes that I tried to get, um, uh, everything in a plastic bag, and he gives me my gun back. And as he's giving me my shield back, he goes, "Yeah, I was pulling for you the whole time." Fucking look up at him. I'm looking at him. I said, "Thanks a lot, sir. I appreciate it." I said, "Well, I can't believe he fucking said that." So to fuck me a little bit more, I live in Yonkers, so it would be a lot easier for me to go to Poughkeepsie. But to fuck me a little bit more, they send me to Middletown instead, and they're thinking I'm going to protest. I was so I was just so glad to be back on the job. I didn't even care if they sent me to B or A troop. I didn't give a fuck as long as I was a trooper again. Because I don't know about these new kids, that I don't know if we'll get into it later with this Facebook shit, but to me, you're a fucking trooper, man. That is a big fucking deal, man. You're a fucking trooper. I said, act like a fucking trooper. And knowing that I was a trooper again, it was just I didn't care where they sent me. It was just in my heart. It says I'm a fucking trooper again. And I was so I tell you the truth, I would have stayed a trooper my entire career if they would have given me the same freaking raise and a car as they do as an investigator. But I got to look out for the family. But I just love being a trooper, and I didn't care that I got to Middletown because it ends up being a blessing in disguise that they sent me to Middletown. You
Yeah.
know,
So then how long you do there and where do you go after Middletown?
so I go to Middletown and I'm in communications, and the first face that I see through there is the first sergeant at the time is Ronnie McConville. Did you know
Yeah.
first
Yep.
sergeant?
Yep.
What a great guy! But not only that,
Yes.
but he's a K troop guy. I walk into his office, says, John, we've heard all the stories and everything like that. We heard about the trial. We heard about, your hearing. I says, all that's behind you. I just want you to be a trooper. I said, thank you, sir. I appreciate the chance. All I ask is just give me the chance. Right. I think it was 2 weeks while in communications. And I got to tell you, the people in communications, I got to mention them because they're such good people. I worked mostly with the two Cisco brothers and Bernie. I mean, there were 2 others there that I worked the sea line with once or twice. I suck with freaking names, but everybody in communications, what good people, what good people. But I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks later that the first shirt comes in and tells me or asks me, he says, "Hey, were you a firearms instructor in Troop K?" I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "You want to do that again?" I like get out of communications and go do firearms? Yeah. He goes, okay, I'm going to put the papers in. It's like fucking, that's how much he thought about me to just put me in there as a firearms instructor. But my time in communications was actually a good time. I didn't have a bad time at all in communications. And then from there, I got to know Captain Nevins. And look, I think what he said to me was anybody that went through what you did and they put in communications, you could have come in here, been sour, not done anything. But I was on the radio. I was, sending types. I was doing whatever they asked me to do. I was doing it. He said that to me. You did whatever they asked you to do without a fucking complaint, no nothing. They sent you down in the basement to freaking bring desks up and do this and that, and you never complained. So where do you want to go? I said, well, the closest place that I can think of that's close to where I was living in Yonkers was Haverstraw. But I knew a lot of people had in go to Haverstraw. And I told him, I said, yes. And I said, sir, I know a lot of people have to go into Haverstraw. I'd like to go there, but if I can't go there, then, I don't know where maybe you can suggest something. He goes, no, no, no. You want to go to Haverstraw? I said, yeah. And he goes, well, you got it. And that's how I ended up getting down to Haverstraw, which was the old Palisades barracks. And I had a pretty eventful first day when I get there now. So um, our narco unit, our CNET unit, had done was doing an investigation down in Haverstraw, and they did a buy bust. And Orlando Rodriguez is the trooper's name, or I'm not sure if he's an investigator then, but I worked with him later on at DETF. But OROD is doing the buy. And for some reason or other, the bad guy gets hanky, takes out a straight razor, and slashes Orlando. And everybody jumps out, because they're listening to everything on the wire. Grab these two guys that were involved, and now they got him at Haverstraw, chained to the wall. And here's me, all dumb, fat, and happy. I'm going to Haverstraw with all my shit, and I'm pulling in. I'm seeing all these troop cars here, the unmarked cars and everything. I'm walking in. I see officers here. I see troopers there, captains, all that shit. I'm saying, what the fuck did I just get into, man? I'm just like coming to this barracks my first day. So I walk in. I said, what's going on, guys? And it says, oh, no, this is what happened. They did a buy bust. They slashed the freaking investigator. He's in the hospital right now. He had a freaking cut right across his cheek. So I says, oh, okay. So where did they get the guys? They go, yeah. So Jay, I kid you not, this is where, and they told me when you go to Havershaw, you're still 2 months on probation. Don't do anything fucked up. Get So I'm still on 2 months probation. So I look into the squad room. You're not gonna believe this shit. These two prisoners, one of them slashed the trooper. We had two couches that we used as benches. I mean, I'll call them couches because they were long. And these two guys had blankets on them. The lights were off, even though the sun was coming through. The lights were off. They had blankets and pillows, and they're sleeping. And I'm sitting there going, oh. I turned around to the trooper. I forget which trooper it was. It might have been Chris Kelly or Brian
Hold on
Hunter.
a second. You're going to tell me this guy's
Oh,
another trooper and they're sleeping with pillows and blankets?
yeah, and I'm like, these are guys that just did this, and they go, yeah, why? I said, well, what the fuck did they got pillows and blankets for? The officer said for us to just keep away, don't touch them, don't do anything. The captain's back there right now. I says, all right, I'll be back. I go in the back, I change, and I come back out. They're still sleeping. I says, well, I'm not gonna touch these motherfuckers. Now the end of the couches were wood over there that they had the pillows on. They were wood. So I walk over. The first thing I do is turn the fucking lights on. So they're like, like this now because the lights are on. I grab the fucking pillows. I pull out the one pillow. Guy bangs his head off the fucking wood. I pull the other pillow off, bangs his head off the wood. I take the two blankets, and they're like, yo, what the fuck? I said, shut the fuck up, asshole. I said, you're not going to be comfortable while you're here. Are you fucking kidding me? You just slashed a trooper? Shut the fuck up before you get your fucking throat ripped out. And they just shut the fuck up. They didn't do anything. But I just could not believe that these guys were sitting there with blankets and pillows, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
didn't touch them, so I was still good on my probation.
So I want to get through as much as possible. Let's fast forward as much as possible, Haverstraw, because I want to talk a little bit about this new generation of what we have going on right now before we sign off. So the rest of your Haverstraw career, how does that go down?
I had a good time in Haverstraw. The captain came down there because my wife was now we had moved to Dutchess County, so I asked if I could work steady ones. And again, for whoever doesn't know, one is a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. tour. My wife didn't feel comfortable in a new house at night. So the only way I could do that is the captain. I guess he got a suggestion from the sergeant, but the captain said, "Can you do the highway task force thing?" I said, "Yeah, sure." You know, for once in my life now, I'm gonna have to go out and just do tickets. But that's not me. I'm not gonna just do tickets because even though I went out and just did a lot of tickets, my thing was this. I set my speed limit at 78, not 70, because I wanted to get people that are going at an excessive rate. If I stopped you and you were good, which was 99% of the people, if I stopped you at 80, I gave you a ticket for 70. And then I pretty much told you, I said, if you want to get it reduced a little bit more, just plead not guilty. And if you don't have a bad driving record, it'll get reduced a little bit more. So I used to get a lot of court time. And one time somebody asked me, says, "Hey, Trooper, you went in there and you did everybody with an 11, no, whatever it was,
1201A.
the 1201A." And I said, "Yeah." I says, "Well, why do you do that?" I said, "Well, I check everybody's driving record. And as long as you don't have a really bad driving record, I take care of it because if I convict you on a speeding violation, your insurance rates go up, right?" They go, "Oh, of course. Yeah." Says, well, I don't get anything out of that, but I can tell you right now, if the insurance companies came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to give you a $50 bonus for every speeding conviction you get," then you're going to be in trouble. I told him, and he laughed and whatnot. But look, I always wanted to take care of the good people. I don't. There's so many people out there that you give tickets to that deserve it, but there's so many good people out there that they made a mistake. Okay, so either you talk to them and let them slide, or give them a reduction and tell them how they can get it reduced even more. The thing that used to get me really ticked off in Haverstraw, there was this one particular trooper that just wrote everybody, no matter what, didn't care. One time that it was finally over the edge, I come into the barracks and there's a woman there with like 5 kids, and I look. I says, "What are you here for, ma'am?" She's in the lobby waiting for a ride. And I got stopped by the trooper. He said my inspection was expired. I said, "So did you get a ticket?" She goes, "Yeah." I says, "Well, he didn't let you take the car?" He goes, "No, he didn't let me take the car." So finally her ride gets there, leaves. So I told the trooper, come back over, says, "Hey, listen, man, you got to realize there's so many scumbags out there to write tickets. When you have a good person, all right, you know what? You need the paper, give her the ticket, but let her drive home with the kids in the car. Man, you're going to leave a bunch of kids in the barracks lobby? Come on, man." He goes, "Well, that's." I said, "Listen, you've been doing this a lot." I told him, I said, if it keeps on going on like this, all right, your locker's going to. It's too bad that the lockers aren't together, or else your locker would be in the parking lot. But I'm going to fuck up your locker. No, no, your locker's going to get fucked up." He goes, and he goes, "Well, then I'm going to make a PC on the whole barracks." I says, "No, no, you don't have to make a PC on the barracks. I'm telling you right now, it's going to be me who's doing it. So you can make the PC on me, but wake the fuck up." I told him, I says, "You don't need to be doing this shit. There's plenty of scumbags to write tickets to. Don't do this to the good people."
You know why, John? Because we all know those type of troopers. I don't even know who it is, but I can probably have a good idea. Those are the type of guys that are scared to do the same things to the bad people because the good people, they won't protest, right? The good people, this mom with the kids, she thinks that this is normal and that she has to abide, so she gets scared into it and there's no protesting. You run into a scumbag that's going to give you it and you're scared, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's what that boils down to. I mean, we all know that. Um, let's. I don't. This is by far, and I'm fine with this. Is by far the longest podcast, and rightfully so. I didn't know half of what you told, referencing your arrest. But real quick, we'll finalize this by going with this new trend of Facebook and making everybody with the recruiting and what they're doing. They posted that video last week of the two troopers coming out of the gas station in plain clothes, and then they drop their drink, and then fast forward and they go into their uniforms with the lights flashing. This is a trend that I've seen on most of social media where
I
all
didn't
the
see that. I heard about that. I wish I would have seen that one.
Yes. Well, that one was probably one of the bad ones because it's a trend now for the highway patrol, and they took it down because one of the troopers, it was in Troop F, I believe it was in Zone 1. One of the troopers was an in shape guy, but his sleeves were rolled, and his Stetson was on backwards. Yes. So they removed the video and then they just reposted it today. It's the same exact video. It looks to me as if they AI'd it and they switched his hat so it looked correct. But why? Do you have? I know it drives you up a fucking
Oh,
wall, but
God.
what's your?
I got roasted. I got roasted a little while ago. I'm sure you know, on this retired trooper site. You know, I don't post a lot, but I'm on this site and I see a picture of a trooper who I found out later on that had just been cut loose from his field training, and he's at an accident scene with a town of Fishkill police car that got into the accident. You got the firemen all around, and you have this trooper who has his Stetson hanging off his gun. He's got these Terminator sunglasses on all the way around, and his trousers look like they're probably about 3 inches too long. They're all bunched up down by his ankles. And I post a picture on the trooper side. Nobody else sees it, just troopers. And I post a picture saying, do they not teach any pride anymore in the academy? I said, this has got to be ridiculous. This guy's out here with his Stetson on his gun. How's he going to draw if something does happen out of nowhere? How the fuck are you going to draw your gun? And you got these terms. This is trooper. When you look up trooper in the dictionary, it should be that Tommy Trooper that we used to have on the freaking envelopes, a sharp, squared away guy. When I got to Haverstraw, one of the first things I started, showing the guys on my tour was how to blouse the back of their shirts so they didn't look sloppy with their shirts. Then I broke out the free polish and the free brush that they give us. And I said, listen, you don't have to spit shine your shoes, your boots, or your holster, but at least look the part, because you
freshen
get
it up, make yourself look professional with scratches and dirt hanging off it.
When you step out like a soup sandwich, you're going to get treated that way. But as a trooper, you should be like, hey, man, I'm a fucking trooper. I demand respect. I'll give you respect, but I demand respect with my appearance. If your appearance looks like shit, then what kind of respect are you going to get? Listen, I love a lot of NYPD cops. So once they started, being lax with their grooming, you got guys with long hair, you got guys with beards, in uniform. Why do you think so many problems in New York City? Have respect, show respect, you'll get respect. Look respectful, you'll get respect. But if you look like a shit sandwich, you're not going to get respect. And that's the bottom line. That's what I tried to show to the Haverstraw guys. And if you talk to the Haverstraw guys, you'll see, a lot of these guys took that to heart and they understand the concept. But when I posted this, you should have seen the response. There was like a response after response after response. How fucked up I was that I was throwing somebody under the bus. I said, first of all, the FTO should have taken care of this a long, long time ago. If he's going to go out there with that attitude and look like shit. All right. And second of all, I had some vitriol coming out that was unbelievable. Oh, dirty boots. And some guys are showing me their dirty boots. I said, listen, motherfucker, if you're going to run through the woods, yeah, your boots are going to be dirty. My boots did get dirty when I ran through the woods. And I got plenty of fucking times that I ran through the woods. But when I got back to the barracks, I cleaned off my fucking boots. So you don't have to show me your fucking dirty boots. Another guy fucking gets on there and says, I'd love to look up your freaking stats and see what kind of slug you are. I said, guess what, motherfucker? Look up my stats. I give permission to anybody on that site who's an officer, look up my stats and see if you can even compare. I bet you I have more arrests. I wanted to respond back to him, but I lost his freaking thing. I wanted to tell him I have more arrests in my first year in Peekskill than you probably do in your entire fucking career, asshole. So don't tell me about it. And then some fucking bitch upstate posts my arrest. That says trooper indicted on lies and gun sale. I said, yeah, and why don't you put the story in there that was 20 years ago, and then I beat the case and I got brought back after my hearing to complete a 32-year career. But you don't want to you don't want to go with the rest of the story. You just want to be a keyboard warrior and stay behind your keyboard and talk shit. But and Jay, whoever this goes out to on the podcast, if anybody has a problem with me with the way that I presented that soup sandwich of a trooper, and with me calling anybody out with the post that they made, you know me. You can come see me anytime you fucking want. You can get in touch with me anytime you want. And if you think you want to adjust my attitude, no problem. Come and see me because I'll take care of it. I'm a fucking trooper, and when I see a soup sandwich out there, I want to correct it because we have a long tradition, all right, of troopers, and I want it to continue, not with the shit that's out there now.
John, what did I say for my introduction as to how I knew you? My introduction was that that's what you did. Even when we were at the fairgrounds, that was just your thing. And yet that was you to a T. So it just proves that you've never changed. I will say one thing, and it's not necessarily in a defense of this trooper. It's just an overall blanket statement. Where you're coming from is exactly right. I don't think many people realize this guy looks like a soup sandwich. All right, you can debate that somewhat because who knows what the circumstances are. But the point of the matter is a guy. In your case, he had the Stetson hanging from the gun. So now it becomes a safety issue as well. So there's multiple facets to this. So I get that they don't want us out there hanging our own, and the circumstances may be different depending on the situation, but it is what it is. The pants not worn correctly, as you call it, the Terminator sunglasses, and the Stetson around the gun. I mean, we can do better, right? I know, if you're in the thick of it and you don't get your Stetson on last minute because you're jumping out of a car, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you're at an accident scene, it's you're 30 minutes deep into it, or that the scene's secure. Let's get yourself squared away. Let's make sure, because we know, right? We know, especially now in 2026, that what's going to happen. There, people are going to start taking pictures. So do the best to
Well,
look through what you can.
you're not gonna have that problem for a while with the new first sergeant in Troop F. I can guarantee you that right now.
Yes,
Because I know
that's
his father for a long time, and
well.
and he's like me. His father, one of the first things his father told him is take care of this. So
I
you're not
gotta
gonna have a problem with that.
remind me when we go off air. I'm going to tell you something that I don't want. He's still working, so I don't want to say anything. I have nothing, and it's nothing bad, by the way. Seth is a great guy, and from what I hear, everybody loves him as a first sergeant. So it's only a testament to what you're saying. I just don't want to say anything to potentially ruffle any feathers.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
hear you.
but anyway, yeah. So we all know we have to do better, social media wise. Unfortunately, there's literally no fish left in the pond, and they're scraping at the bottom of the barrel. But we can't sacrifice our our pride because we don't have anybody. We have to still try to
Standard.
do the best we can.
You can't lower the standards. Maybe other departments want to lower their standards, but we're the New York fucking troopers. We don't lower our standards. I mean, that's the way I feel, and that's the way everybody should feel. But I guess everybody doesn't feel that way. Nothing for nothing. And one of the other things that I see out there is like the fucking pay. You know what? I came on the job when I was getting what, 17,000 fucking dollars, $18,000 a year because I wanted to be a trooper. But now they're complaining. I'm making 100 and something, but it's not enough. Okay, listen, I understand. There's other agencies that do make more than us. Okay, but at the same time, look, I wish that you guys get your contract and they make even more money than the other agencies. But please don't cry to some of us that came on that were making 17 and $18,000 a year.
Well, not
And
only that, John, not only that, but when you sign up and become a trooper, you know what you're signing up for. You know what your salary is. So that shouldn't be your major argument, is that you're not getting paid too much. You know what you're signing up for. So, either get into a position where you can work more overtime, or suck it up and be on the job for why you want to be on a job, because you love
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Anyway, we could go on and on. I really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to spend with us. That is a very interesting and well spoken story of yours, and I appreciate you sharing it. Any
I'm
last
happy.
words? Any
I'm,
last
I'm
words before we depart?
Well, I want to thank you for inviting me. I wanted to get a whole lot off my chest, which I think I've done. Believe me, I have so much more. I hope we could do a part two of this because there's some other stories I would love to tell you. But
Absolutely.
no, I had a good time with you, and it's great knowing you for so many years. And when you started doing this, I definitely wanted to be one of the guests on there, especially since a lot of the guys would come to me and tell me, "Hey, I'm going to talk to Jay about getting you on there. I'm going to talk to Jay about getting you on there."
So,
So
little side note, I'm not gonna. This will be another thing we talk about off air, but you were probably one of my first 10 thoughts when originating this, and it was a culmination of things, one of which was I wanted to time it correct, but there was also another factor, which again we'll talk about off air. But I can definitely see you coming on again at some point. I deeply appreciate your time. For all the listeners that are with me, thank you so much. Please like, follow, share. Tell John and I we're assholes. Tell us what we did wrong, whatever you want to do. It's all good. I'm here to do what I can to get the word out on these old timers and their stories on the road. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jace. Talk to you
All
soon.
right. Yep.